Chapter 126. On North Blue Lake. Sunlight shone on the surface of the lake, making it sparkle. From time to time, large aquatic creatures would emerge from the surface of the lake, creating ripples. The fishing boat sailed across the lake. On the deck, Mo, Xiao Bai, and the others were leaning against the railing, looking at the lake in the distance. Mu Forest's gaze swept across the surface of the lake as he said, "Didn't they say there were a lot of mermen? We've been out for half an hour already. Why haven't we seen any?" Mo Xiao Bai smiled slightly. "This area is near Northridge Town. The mermen should have been cleared out already, right? We should be able to find them a little further away." When Mu Forest heard this, he nodded slightly. At this moment, a few white waves swept across the surface of the lake, heading directly in the direction of the fishing boat. Mo Xiao Bai's eyebrows jumped slightly. He could see a light gray line of misfortune on the surface of the water. He smiled slightly. "They're here. Dong dong dong." The surface of the lake exploded as three gray figures shot into the air, landing on the deck of the fishing boat. They were three elite merman warriors that were around 8 meters tall. Their cultivations were around rank 2, level 5, or 6. The leader was a merman warrior that was entirely black in color. His expression was savage as he pointed at Mo Xiao Bai and the others. He opened his mouth wide, mumbling something that no one knew what to say. Mu Forest glanced at the three merman warriors, then turned to look at Ji Fei Bai and the others. "Fei Bai, I'll leave these to you guys." Ji Fei Bai smiled slightly. "No problem." The taciturn Kong Xiu Ran nodded. Streaks of earthen yellow light flickered on his body as a suit of rock armor condensed on the surface of his body. Rare grade origin skill, rock armor. Earth type origin skill. He held a large shield in his hand as he stepped onto the deck and charged directly at the three merman warriors. Although Kong Xiu Ran's speed wasn't too fast in Mo Xiao Bai's eyes, it was already quite fast for merman warriors of the same level. When Kong Xiu Ran charged, the three merman warriors immediately fell silent. They looked at Kong Xiu Ran cautiously, then roared as they charged forward, sweeping the weapons in their hands towards Kong Xiu Ran. Kong Xiu Ran's delicate face revealed a trace of ridicule as the earthen yellow light flickered on his large shield. Dong! Kong Xiu Ran's figure turned sluggish under the rolling air waves, and the three elite fishmen warriors staggered from the impact. When a mermaid warrior staggered, Ji Fei Bai turned into an afterimage and instantly passed by the mermaid warrior's side. A cold light flashed in the air as blood gushed out from the mermaid warrior's body. In the next moment, several Murloc warriors fell heavily on the ground, and their vitality dissipated. Mo Xiao Bai looked at Ji Fei Bai, and Kong Xiu Ran in surprise. He was quite strong. From their previous conversation, Mo Xiao Bai knew that Mu Forest had been forming a team with Li Mu and the other two to hunt together. Moreover, Mu Forest was from the Mu family, so he would definitely not be lacking credits. Li Mu and the other two could be considered as members of his own team. Looking at it now, Kong Xiu Ran and Ji Fei Bai's strength was indeed not weak. After taking a portion of the mermaid warriors' corpses as evidence for the mission, the remaining corpses were thrown into North Green Lake. The fishing boat did not stop and continued to move forward. Because they did not know which area had the most mermaids, Mo Xiao Bai and Li Shu discussed and decided to go to the area where they encountered One-Eyed last time. Since there was a leader in that area, there should be one now, right? As the fishing boat moved, mermaids would occasionally approach. They were all elite mermaids. Although they did not see any leader mermaids, they had already killed about 30 to 40 elite mermaids. This number was beyond Mo Xiao Bai's imagination. In such a short time, there were already 30 to 40 elite mermaids. One could imagine how many mermaids there were in this area. Soon, the fishing boat arrived at the area where they encountered One-Eyed last time. At this moment, Mo Xiao Bai was slightly stunned. He turned his head and looked at the dark gray and red lines of misfortune floating on the left. As Mo Xiao Bai's cultivation increased, the range of the lines of misfortune was close to 1 kilometer. With such a large range, The amount of prey they could find would naturally be even more. This was the first time Mo Xiaobai encountered a dark gray line of misfortune today. He squinted his eyes and shouted towards the cabin. Li Shu, let's go left. Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Mu Lin was stunned. He turned his head and looked at Mo Xiaobai. Why did you suddenly change direction? Mo Xiaobai smiled. I feel like there's something good over there. Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Yin Shui's expression became strange. She looked at Mo Xiaobai and seemed to remember the feeling she had when they were at the Blade Peak Mountains. The leader-level blade eagle fell from the sky. What a coincidence, right? Mu Lin was confused. What? Feeling? What feeling? Li Mu'er and the other two also looked at Mo Xiaobai in confusion. Mo Xiaobai looked at their confused expressions and smiled without saying anything. Uncle Li didn't have any doubts. He replied directly from the cabin. Okay, turn left. The fishing boat started to move to the left. As it got closer and closer to the left, Mo Xiaobai realized that there were more and more dark gray lines of misfortune. After a few hundred meters, he could see that the dark gray lines of misfortune went deep into the lake. When they were about 300 meters away from the source of the dark gray lines of misfortune, the source of the lines of misfortune seemed to have noticed the fishing boat and came closer. Mu Lin turned his head and looked at the calm lake. He laughed. Xiaobai, is there something wrong with your senses? It doesn't seem to be anything. At this moment, on the surface of the lake, white waves surged and shot towards the fishing boat. Seeing this, Mu Lin and the others opened their eyes wide. Ji Feibai shouted, What the F***, CK? There's really something? They were dumbfounded. At this moment, the white waves approached the fishing boat. Gray figures rushed out from the lake and landed on the surface of the lake. There were a total of 12 huge murlocs. The one in the lead was 2 meters tall, wearing light green leather armor and holding a huge black iron battle axe. Its face was ferocious, and its body was covered in grayish-white fish scales. It was a third-stage level murloc leader. Its bulging eyes moved and flashed with a cold light. Ha! There are fishing boats coming to this area now. Mo Xiaobai looked at the murloc leader and opened his eyes wide in surprise. The murloc leader they met last time was only a second-stage murloc. He did not expect that there would be a third-stage murloc leader here in such a short time. Mu Lin and the others had never been here before. After seeing the huge murloc leader, their eyes flashed with excitement. Mu Lin smiled and said, A third-stage level murloc leader. It should be around 20,000 credits, right? Hee, we've caught a big fish. Yin Shui remained silent. She had already taken out her icy blue bow. Mo Xiaobai also stood up straight, and the blood-veined heavy sword appeared in his hand. He looked at the elite murloc behind the murloc leader and said with a smile, We'll take care of the leader. I'll leave the elite murloc to you guys. Kong Xiao Ran nodded. Don't worry, leave it to us. Seeing Mo Xiaobai and the others ready for battle, the murloc leader's bulging eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. It then clenched the black iron battle axe in its hand. Weak guys, you guys actually want to make a move against the great iron axe? Seeing the ferocious appearance of the fishman leader, Mo Xiaobai didn't reply. He pursed his lips slightly, and with a surge of origin power, he transformed into a sword beam and disappeared on the spot, charging toward the fishman leader. Blade edge walk. His body instantly appeared beside the murloc leader. At the same time, a streak of sword light shot out towards Iron Axe's neck. Iron Axe felt the sharp edge of the blade, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. He then let out a low roar and suddenly turned his body. The edge of the blade streaked past his neck. He roared and clenched his battle axe, planning to attack. At this moment, a frost arrow appeared on his left side. Iron Axe's body stiffened, and he gripped his battle axe tightly, blocking the frost arrow. Clang! The frost arrow shot onto the millstone-sized battle axe. The powerful impact caused Iron Axe to retreat a few steps. At this moment, a bloody light flashed on Mo Xiaobai's heavy sword, and wild heavy strike slashed towards Iron Axe. Iron Axe had just blocked the attack, and before he could recover, Emo Xiao Bai's attacks had already arrived, pressuring him to the point that he could not breathe. Feeling the powerful might of Wild Heavy Strike, he let out a low roar and planned to dodge. At this moment, a few whirlwinds wrapped around his legs, making it difficult for him to move for a moment. Rare grade origin skill, Binding. Forrest's hands were surrounded by a gentle breeze as he smiled at the violent Iron Axe in the distance. Under the effects of Binding, Iron Axe could only receive Emo Xiao Bai's attacks head-on. He roared angrily and used his axe to block the heavy sword. Clang! The sound of collision rang out. Iron Axe felt the frightening power from the heavy sword, and his expression changed drastically. What terrifying strength! His hands trembled and blood seeped out of the web between his thumb and forefinger. He could not even hold the heavy axe in his hands. Just as Iron Axe was about to lose consciousness from the violent pressure, Emo Xiao Bai kicked out and landed heavily on Iron Axe's abdomen. Boom! His body bent, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body flew back a few meters and landed heavily on the ground. He knelt on the ground and clutched his stomach. His eyes flashed with shock as he looked at Emo Xiao Bai. Without a second thought, he turned around, intending to jump over the railing and run back into the lake. Just as he turned around, a frost arrow pierced through his defenseless neck. His body froze in place and then fell heavily to the ground. Forrest, who was condensing wind blades in his hands, was stunned when he saw the corpse on the ground. He looked at Yin Shui and then at Emo Xiao Bai. The corner of his mouth twitched. Aren't the two of you a little too strong? You guys killed that guy so quickly? He had only used Binding from beginning to end, which was extremely difficult to bear. And in the distance, there were still 11 elite Fishmen warriors left fighting with Kong Xiu Ran and the other two. The combined battle strength of the three of them was extremely strong. 5 of the elite Fishmen warriors had already fallen into a pool of blood. After the remaining Fishmen saw that their leader had died in battle, their eyes widened. With a frightened expression, they cried out a few times and turned around, intending to flee. At this moment, Emo Xiao Bai, Yin Shui, and Forrest attacked and killed all the merfolk warriors. So many Fishmen. We've struck it rich. A single Tier 3 Fishman leader can give us more than 20,000 credits. 11 Tier 2 Pinnacle Elite Fishman warriors should be able to give us 7 to 8,000 credits. This wave alone is 30,000 credits. Li Mu'er grinned as she calculated. Her face was filled with excitement. Emo Xiao Bai also revealed a smile. Even if it was divided among 6 people, each person would get at least 5,000 credits. It was just one wave. If only there were a few more waves of these merfolk leaders. Forrest grinned as he looked at Emo Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai, isn't your intuition too accurate? Why don't you try to sense where there are strong merfolk leaders? If we can do this 8 or 9 times today, we'll be rich. Emo Xiao Bai rolled his eyes. How can it be that easy? How do I know when my intuition is accurate? He turned to look at the lakeside. It was all light gray and light red. There were no merfolk leaders within 2 kilometers. Is that so? Forrest was a bit disappointed. Forget it, we'll slowly search. North Green Lake, on a small island with a radius of more than 10 kilometers, there were simple wooden buildings standing on the beach of the island. These wooden buildings were scattered around, and there were at least 100 of them. At this moment, many of the buildings were in ruins, and some of them were on fire. In the open space outside the buildings, merfolk corpses were strewn everywhere. There were at least a few hundred of them. Su Yin stood among the corpses, wearing a set of crimson metal armor. She stepped on the chest of a 2.5-meter tall merfolk wearing heavy black armor. This huge merfolk had a ferocious appearance. He struggled to stand up, but no matter how hard he struggled, cracks appeared on the ground where he was lying. Su Yin's foot was like an unmovable boulder, not moving an inch. Su Yin's beautiful face had a fierce expression. She looked at the huge merfolk fiercely. Speak. Where is your leader? Why are there so many merfolk causing trouble? What are you trying to do? Blah, 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 blah. The huge merfolk expert blabbered a lot. and Suyin felt a headache coming on. She was speechless as she looked at Natsuki, who was wearing a green robe and holding a dark green wooden staff. Tong Tong, what is this fellow saying? Natsuki looked at the ferocious-looking merfolk warrior. She flickered green hair and said, I think he's cursing you. Hearing this, Su Yin's eyes widened. What? This bastard dares to curse me? She stomped down with force. Dong! The armor on the merman warrior's chest cracked, and the rocks on the ground beneath him immediately caved in. Spiderweb-like cracks spread out. The merfolk warrior opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura became even weaker. I'll give you one last chance. If you don't speak, I'll stab you to death. Su Yin waved the 2-meter-long crimson spear in his hand, as if he was demonstrating his power. The merfolk warrior only stared at Su Yin. His bulging eyes were filled with hatred and unwillingness. Natsuki looked at the merfolk warrior and rubbed her forehead. She sighed and said, I'm afraid he won't speak. Su Yin furrowed her brows slightly and stomped her foot heavily again. Dong! The merfolk warrior died on the spot. What do we do? This is already the 3rd merfolk camp, and none of them are willing to tell us where their leader is. The reward for this mission is an epic grade equipment set. I really want it. She was still wearing a legendary grade equipment set. Natsuki pursed her lips and said, Let's take it slow. If we can't find it, the others shouldn't be able to find it either. She paused and said, Let's take a look at the camp first. Maybe we can find some clues. Suyin nodded helplessly. The two of them left the clearing and walked toward the merfolk camp. Chapter 127. The sky gradually darkened, and the sun slowly set from the side of the holy mountain, dyeing the horizon orange. On the fishing boat, Li Shu walked out of the cabin. He scanned the deck and saw Mo Xiaobai and the others tossing the merfolk corpses into the lake. The sturdy alloy on the deck had some traces of battle. Mo Xiaobai saw Li Shu walk out and smiled. Li Shu, why did you come out? He noticed Li Shu's gaze and smiled embarrassedly. We'll compensate you for the damage on the deck when we get back. Li Shu smiled. Xiaobai, why don't we call it a day? It's going to be dark soon. Why don't we rest for the night? Hearing Uncle Li's words, Mo Xiaobai nodded. Okay, Uncle Li, then I'll get someone to turn off the engine and then get someone to make something delicious. Sorry to trouble you. It's no trouble at all. Li Shu smiled and waved his hand. He went back into the cabin while Mo Xiaobai and the others continued to deal with the merfolk corpses. The sky turned from dark blue to dark green. Gradually, night fell. The stars and the silver moon hung high in the sky. The silver light of the moon and stars scattered on northern Blue Lake, causing specks of light to appear. After the fishing boat turned off its engine, it drifted on the lake. The environment became very quiet. Only the sound of the waves could be heard from time to time. Mo Xiaobai and the others went into the cabin. The food was already prepared. The food was fish and shellfish. They were fished up from the lake before and were quite fresh. The taste was also quite good. Some of the fish were even extraordinary materials. After eating them, the body would have certain benefits. After dinner, Li Shu said that if they were to spend the night at northern Blue Lake, they needed someone to be on guard to prevent any merfolk or other creatures from the lake from boarding the boat. And Mo Xiaobai and the others had originally wanted to discuss how to keep watch, but Li Shu said that they, as fishermen, were better at keeping watch, so they took over the job. In addition, Mo Xiaobai and the others had been fighting for a whole day, so they naturally did not decline and returned to their rooms to rest. Mo Xiaobai, Mu Forest, Ji Feibai, and Kong Xiuran were assigned to one dormitory, while Li Muir and Yin Shui were assigned to another dormitory. The dormitory on the fishing boat was very small, only about 10 square meters. After entering the door, one could see 2 metal bunk beds on each side. The 4 of them had 1 bed each. Lying on the bed, the 4 of them were all boys of the same age. After chatting about some topics that boys of the same age should talk about, they went to rest. Over the next few days, the fishing boat roamed around the lake near Northridge Town. Mo Xiaobai and the rest occasionally encountered other fishing boats, all of which were adventurers. Because there was no conflict of interest, everyone just looked at each other on the boat and then separated. 4 days later, at noon, The flames were high in the sky. Mu Sun Lin stood on the deck as the gentle breeze ruffled his long green hair. He narrowed his eyes as he looked at the calm surface of the lake. He said, "It's already been half a day, and we haven't seen any murlocs. Are there fewer murlocs?" Mo Xiaobai looked around. There were only white lines around them, not even a light gray line. He frowned slightly. There were no light gray lines of misfortune, which meant that there were no hostile creatures nearby. Either there were no merfolk nearby, or the merfolk did not want to attack their fishing boat. He did not know why. Yin Shui looked at Mo Xiaobai. "What do we do?" Mu Forest also grinned and looked at Mo Xiaobai. "Xiaobai, your intuition is so accurate. Hurry up and feel it again. Where are we going to find merfolk next?" In the past few days, Mo Xiaobai would occasionally say that he had a premonition. Every time, he would find a large group of merfolk. This made Mu Forest and the rest feel that Mo Xiaobai's premonition was extremely magical. It was like a prophecy. Mo Xiaobai looked at Mu Forest and the rest's expectant faces and could not help but curse in his heart. What kind of premonition did he have? It was all because of the white lines that led the way. There was not even a single line of misfortune. Where was he going to get a premonition? He looked around and saw a faint black spot in the distance. He raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Why don't we go to the island and take a look? We've been on the lake for the past few days. I heard that there might be a merfolk camp on the island. Why don't we go and take a look?" Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Mu Forest and the rest were taken aback. Li Muir's eyes widened slightly. Go to the island? Wouldn't it be too dangerous? Mu Sun Lin, on the other hand, revealed a look of anticipation. Our area is not more than 50 li away from the shore. Even if there is a fisherman encampment, the fisherman's cultivation shouldn't be too high. Maybe we can meet quite a few leaders. I think we can give it a try. Yin Shui looked at Mo Xiaobai and said calmly, "I have no objections." Mo Xiaobai looked at the worried Li Muir and grinned. "Look at how accurate my intuition is. Maybe when we get closer and feel danger, we won't go up. Don't worry too much. If there really is a merfolk camp that we can take down, it'll be a lot of credits." Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Li Muir and the rest could not help but roll their eyes. Clearly, they did not take it seriously. There's a limit to how lucky you can be. Okay? If you can really feel danger, then wouldn't that be too ridiculous? Mu Forest's face was full of disbelief. Mo Xiaobai shrugged and did not say anything. Then, he turned to the cabin and shouted, "Li Shu, can you send us to the island?" Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, the cabin was silent for a moment. Then Li Shu walked out. His face was full of hesitation as he looked at Mo Xiaobai and the rest. "You guys plan to go to the island?" Mo Xiaobai saw Li Shu's hesitation and nodded slightly. "Yes, Li Shu. If you guys are worried about your safety, you don't have to go ashore. When the time comes, Fei Bai will stay behind to protect you guys." Hearing this, Fei Bai opened his mouth and wanted to say something. Mu Forest patted his shoulder and smiled. "Don't worry. When the time comes, you'll get a share of the credits." He helplessly looked at Mo Xiaobai and nodded. "Okay." Hearing that Fei Bai would stay behind to protect them, Li Shu hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Okay then, but do you guys really want to go to the island? It's not safe on the island." "Don't worry, Li Shu. We know what we're doing. There shouldn't be many strong merfolk on the island near the shore, right?" Li Shu nodded. "The closer we are to the shore, the weaker the merfolk will be. Then it's fine. Let's go." Seeing that Mo Xiaobai and the others had made up their minds, Li Shu didn't say anything else. He turned around and entered the cabin. The fishing boat continued to move. Not long after, they found the island in the distance and slowly approached it. When they were about 2 kilometers away from the island, Mo Xiaobai saw that at the edge of the area covered by his white light, there were light gray and light red lights moving around. They were moving in the direction of the island. Mo Xiaobai's eyes lit up and flashed. There really was something. As the fishing boat got closer to the island, the range of the white light had already touched the island. The color of the light was getting darker and darker. Mu Forest looked at the island in the distance and turned around to look at Mo Xiaobai. "Xiaobai, how is it? Feel it? Is there a merfolk camp on this island?" Mo Xiao smiled mysteriously. It's okay. I think there should be a lot of merfolk on the island. Hearing this, everyone raised their eyebrows and turned to look in the direction of the island. The island was very small. It was only about 4 to 5 kilometers wide. It was like a small hill. There were many trees growing in the middle of the island. The closer they got to the edge, the fewer trees there were. Instead, there were many rocks. When the fishing boat was about 1 kilometer away from the island, Li Shu walked out of the cabin and said, Xiao Bai will send you here. There's a small boat on the fishing boat. If you want to go to the island, take the small boat. And Mo Xiao Bai nodded. No problem. With Li Shu's strength, it would be too dangerous if they met any merfolk on the island. He turned around to look at Ji Fei Bai. Ji Fei Bai said, I'll stay and protect them. And Mo Xiao Bai smiled and nodded. Sorry to trouble you. Then, the staff took out a small wooden boat wrapped in iron and placed it on the lake. Mo Xiao Bai and the others boarded the boat. Mu Forest stirred up the wind element, and the boat quickly rowed towards the island under the waves. On the fishing boat, Li Shu looked at Ji Fei Bai and smiled. Ji Fei Bai, sorry to trouble you. Ji Fei Bai raised his head slightly and said proudly, Don't worry, Captain Li. With me here, you won't be in danger. As the successor of the Ji family, he was very talented. Naturally, he had his own pride. Li Shu nodded. It's windy outside. Why don't we go in a cabin? Okay. The small wooden boat landed on the shore of the island, which was full of pebbles. Mo Xiao Bai and the others took out ropes and tied the boat to a protruding rock. After securing the boat, they left the fishing boat and went ashore. Li Muir held the scepter in her hand tightly. She looked around and shrunk her neck. Forest, what should we do next? Mu Forest turned to Mo Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai, what do you think? Mo Xiao Bai's gaze swept across the surroundings. Then he smiled and said, Let's walk around the coast and see the situation. In his vision, the line of misfortune and line of good fortune were not on this side. Obviously, there was nothing on this shore. Mu Forest had no objections. He nodded. Then let's take a look. Be careful. Kong Xiu ran nodded and walked to the front silently. He held a battle shield in his left hand and a battle hammer in his right. He had already formed a rock armor around his body. He looked around cautiously. Mo Xiao Bai stood beside Kong Xiuran. Yin Shui, Mu Forest, and Li Muir stood behind him. The shore was covered with rocks, and there were cliffs from time to time. However, for Mo Xiao Bai and the others, these cliffs that were tens of meters tall were clearly unable to obstruct their path. Mo Xiao Bai and the others walked around the shore for a few kilometers. After they passed through a small forest, they opened their eyes wide and looked at the scene outside the forest. Outside the small forest, there was a large open space. On the open space, there were some simple buildings that looked like small huts. These buildings were arranged in an irregular manner. They looked very random. Some murlocs walked in and out of the buildings. There were also murlocs that crawled out of the lake from time to time. In the middle of these buildings, there was a large fire. The carcass of some animal was being roasted on the fire. There was also a large pot that seemed to be boiling hot soup. What made Mo Xiao Bai and the others open their eyes wide was that there was a simple cage made of brambles at the edge of the fire. There were a few fishermen locked up in the cage. Their faces were pale, and they looked terrified. They were curled up in the cage and trembling. The few elite mermaid warriors who were guarding the cages were talking loudly. Seeing the frightened look of the fishermen in the cages, they raised their heads and laughed out loud. Seeing this scene, Mo Xiao Bai and the others frowned tightly. Kong Xiuran, who had been silent, said coldly, Are these fishermen being eaten by the murlocs? These bastards. Mu Forest's emerald green eyes flashed with a cold light. In the cage in the open space, a young rabbit man shrunk his neck. He looked at the carcass on the grill, and his eyes were filled with fear and despair. We're going to be eaten soon. Hearing this, the remaining fishermen trembled. Some of them even started sobbing. I don't want to die. Who's going to save us? My child is only 1 month old. Why am I so unlucky? At this moment, the Murloc chef who was barbecuing suddenly said something, and the Murloc warrior who was guarding the cage immediately replied with a few words. Then, He opened the cage and reached inside with his big hand. When the fishermen in the cage saw the big hand, they immediately broke down. They cried and pushed each other, hoping to avoid the big hand. "No, don't grab me. Grab someone else. Don't grab me. I beg you, let me go. My meat stinks. Don't eat me." When the other elite murlocs saw the terrified fishermen, they smiled ferociously and laughed. Under the pushing and shoving of the fishermen in the cage, a middle-aged merman's hand was grabbed. The middle-aged merman cried and tried to struggle. However, his cultivation was only at the beginning of the first aperture. He was as weak as a baby in front of the elite murlocs who were at the peak of the second stage. When the fishermen saw the middle-aged merman being dragged out of the cage, they had complicated expressions. There was fear, relief, and also despair. A few elite murlocs pointed at the middle-aged merman who was crying and struggling and laughed. At this moment, a frost arrow was shot from afar. It shot into the mouth of the elite murlocs who were grabbing the middle-aged merman and came out from the back of his head. The elite murlocs widened their eyes. There was still a hint of confusion in his eyes. His vitality dissipated, and he fell heavily to the ground. The other mermen who were laughing wildly seemed to be choked by an invisible force. Their laughter stopped abruptly. Chapter 128. After a moment of silence, all the murlocs turned their heads and looked in the direction where the frost arrow came from. When the middle-aged merman realized that the elite murloc warrior who was holding him had suddenly died, his eyes widened. There was some confusion in his eyes, but there was also some residual fear. He wanted to stand up and run, but he realized that fear made his body tremble nonstop. He fell to the ground and was soaked in sweat. When the other fishermen in the cage saw this, they were stunned at first, but then they all smiled in surprise. Someone is here to save us. It's a strong warrior. A strong warrior is here to take care of these animals. That's great. We're saved." While the fishermen were cheering, Mo Xiaobai turned his head and looked at Yin Shui, who was holding a longbow with a cold expression. She was ruthless and didn't say much. She immediately attacked without saying anything. "As expected of you." He smiled and said, "Let's go." In the forest, Li Mu Er and Kong Xiuran nodded. Mo Xiaobai stomped on the ground and was the first to rush out of the forest. As he ran, the blood-patterned heavy sword appeared in his hand. His gaze swept across the entire murloc encampment. In his eyes, gray lines of misfortune and red lines of good luck intertwined. In the largest building in the middle of the encampment, there were several dark gray and grayish-black lines of misfortune intertwined. There was also a red line of good luck. There should be powerful murlocs inside, but they didn't seem to be alarmed by the commotion. When they saw Mo Xiaobai rush out, the originally somewhat dazed fishmen immediately began to roar in their gibberish. One by one, the murloc warriors rushed toward Mo Xiaobai with weapons in their hands. At this moment, a series of frost arrows and light green wind blades slashed through the air. The frost arrows accurately pierced the murloc's eyes, and the wind blades slashed their necks. Before Mo Xiaobai came into contact with the murlocs, more than 10 elite murloc warriors had already fallen to the ground. Seeing this scene, all the murloc warriors held their breaths, and then they began to squeak. Dong dong dong. The doors of the small shacks opened one after another, and murloc warriors walked out of the shacks one after another. From the largest shack, 5 murloc leaders, who were over 2 meters tall and muscular, wearing leather or iron armors, rushed out. The 5 fishmen leaders glanced at the ground with their pale yellow fish eyes. After seeing the corpses of the elite fishmen warriors, they immediately became furious. A murloc leader with a sinister scar on his forehead coldly looked at Mo Xiaobai. "Human, you actually dare to come here? You're courting death." He held a black, edgeless, heavy sword in his hand. His feet stepped on the ground, and he charged towards Mo Xiaobai. Mo Xiaobai narrowed his eyes as he felt the murloc leader's ferocious aura. Afterward, he circulated his origin power and activated the golden scale armor. His entire body transformed into a blade of light and arrived before the murloc leader in an instant. "Chi!" The sharp blade, Chi, cut through the air and shot towards the head of the leader of the Murlocs. The leader of the Murlocs roared and turned his head. Chi! The blade, Chi, cut a wound on the face of the leader of the Murlocs, causing blood to spurt out. "You're courting death," he roared as he gripped the heavy sword with both hands and swept it towards Mo Xiaobai. The edgeless heavy sword carried an incomparably powerful force, causing the wind to howl. Mo Xiaobai's pupils shrank as he blocked with the blood veins on his heavy sword. Clang! His body retreated a few steps. At this moment, a sound pierced through the air. Mo Xiaobai saw an iron spear flying towards him from the corner of his eyes. It was an iron spear thrown by another Murloc leader. The hairs on his back stood up as his body transformed into a blade of light and dodged the attack of the iron spear. The other 3 Murloc leaders had already charged over, and they held their weapons and attacked Mo Xiaobai. Just as Mo Xiaobai was about to be besieged, a frost arrow wrapped in white mist shot out from afar. It went straight for a tall Murloc leader who was holding a battle axe. His upper body was naked, and his chest was covered in scars. At the same time, a chain of wind blades shot out from Mu Forest's hands towards a Murloc leader who was holding a huge black battle blade. Yin Shui and Mu Forest's attack power was extremely strong. The Murloc leader who was originally planning to attack Mo Xiaobai either dodged or blocked. At this moment, he could no longer care about Mo Xiaobai. The remaining 2 Murloc leaders had already arrived in front of Mo Xiaobai. Just as the 2 Murloc leaders were about to attack, a cold light flashed through Mo Xiaobai's eyes. He once again transformed into a blade of light and disappeared from where he stood. The 2 Murloc leaders' attacks were evaded. They angrily turned their heads to look for Mo Xiaobai, but they discovered that Mo Xiaobai had already charged towards a distant Murloc leader who was carrying several spears on his back and holding a long spear in his hand. Blade Walk! Blade Walk! After using Blade Walk twice in a row, the origin power within Mo Xiaobai's body was rapidly depleting. However, he had shaken off the Murloc leader who was roaring behind him and arrived in front of the spear-wielding Murloc leader. There were still 4 blade lights revolving around his body. These were the blade aura condensed from Blade Walk. When he appeared in front of the spear-wielding Murloc leader, a cold, killing intent flashed through his black pupils. With a thought for blade, auras instantly gushed out and shot towards the spear-wielding Murloc leader. At the same time, his origin power gushed out. His life force and titan power circulated and exploded. The veined patterns on the blood-patterned heavy sword lit up with a bloody light. The power of the blood-patterned patterns. Wild heavy strike. Mo Xiaobai did not hold back at all. He exploded with his most powerful strength, and the blood-patterned heavy sword wrapped in a bloody light slashed towards the spear-wielding Murloc leader. 4 blade lights flashed through the spear-wielding Murloc leader's bulging fish eyes, and a somewhat shocked expression flashed through them. The long spear in his hand slashed around his body. Streaks of spear shadows shot out and collided with the blade lights. Rare grade origin skill, Shadow Splitting Strike. Clang, clang, clang. The instant the blade lights and spear shadows collided, Wild Heavy Strike had already landed. The spear-wielding Murloc leader felt the powerful aura from the heavy sword, and a somewhat shocked expression flashed through his eyes. He roared, and the momentum of his spear changed. Both his hands held the end of the long spear, and his figure changed, assuming a defensive posture. Elite grade origin skill, Spear Block. Mo Xiaobai looked at the spear-wielding Murloc leader, who had assumed a defensive posture. There was no fluctuation in his black pupils, and the heavy sword slashed heavily onto the long spear. Clang! White ripples spread out in the air. The spear-wielding Murloc leader felt the violent power coming from the long spear, and his expression changed drastically. The long spear in his hand was directly shaken out of his hand, and fresh blood flowed out from his hands. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew backwards. How was this possible? The spear-wielding Murloc leader roared as he flew backwards. His expression was ferocious, and he was somewhat in disbelief. He was already at the 3rd rank, 3rd rank, and he was actually sent flying by a 2-apertured 8th rank human. While he was in disbelief, Mo Xiaobai used the recoil force to take a step back, and at the same time his right foot stomped on the ground. Dong! Fine cracks appeared on the hard rocks on the ground. His body charged forward, charging towards the spear-wielding Murloc leader. Seeing this scene, the spear-wielding Murloc leader's expression became ferocious. He pulled out 2 short spears from his back, and the blood on his palm that had been split open was absorbed by the short spears. A faint bloody light flickered on the short spears. Rare origin skill, Bloody Throw. The 2 short spears shot towards Mo Xiaobai. Mo Xiaobai turned his body, and the heavy sword in his hand blocked one of the short spears. He used the recoil force to retreat 2 steps and twisted his body to the side to avoid the other short spear. At this moment, 2 more short spears died with a bloody light shot towards him. Mo Xiaobai squinted his eyes and once again expended his origin power, turning into a blade of light and dodging the 2 short spears. At this moment, the spear-wielding Murloc leader finished throwing the short spears on his back. He turned around and picked up the long spear that had been sent flying. Just as he picked up the long spear, he saw Mo Xiaobai rush in front of him, and a sharp blade of light flashed, shooting towards his neck. The spear-wielding Murloc leader's pupils contracted, and he suddenly turned his body sideways. The blade of light just barely brushed past his neck, and the sharp aura caused a bloody wound to appear on his neck. Mo Xiaobai held the blood-patterned heavy sword with both hands, and a white light flashed, and 3 rays of white sword light slashed through the air. The spear-wielding Murloc leader opened his eyes wide and forced himself into a blocking stance. Clang! With one strike, blood spurted out from the spear-wielding Murloc leader's palm, and his body staggered back a few steps. Clang! With the 2nd strike, the spear-wielding Murloc leader's long spear was once again knocked out of his hand by a violent force. He opened his eyes wide, and they were filled with fear. No! The spear-wielding Murloc leader opened his mouth to shout, but a ray of sword light slashed across his neck. Chi! Fresh blood spurted out, and the spear-wielding Murloc leader's body swayed, and he fell heavily to the ground. Mo Xiaobai didn't even look at the corpse on the ground, and turned his head to look behind him. Just as Mo Xiaobai was charging towards the spear-wielding Murloc leader, the other 4 spear-wielding Murloc leaders were chasing after Mo Xiaobai. At this moment, streaks of frost arrows and wind blades slashed through the air, shooting towards them as if they didn't cost anything. Under the suppression of these powerful attacks, their movements had clearly slowed down quite a bit. The spear-wielding heavy sword roared, and immediately, the spear-wielding and hatchet-wielding Murloc leaders turned their heads, charging towards Yin Shui and the others, at the same time continuously blocking the frost arrows and wind blades. The spear-wielding Murloc leader and the other spear-wielding Murloc leader continued to charge towards Mo Xiaobai. At this moment, gusts of wild wind appear beneath their feet, causing their speed to slow down by a bit. Wind-type origin skill, Binding Technique. This wasn't all. Vines had grown out of the hard ground at some unknown time, and the vines had wrapped around the spear-wielding Murloc leader's legs, causing the spear-wielding Murloc leader to slow down even more. The spear-wielding Murloc leader's speed had slowed down, and it opened its eyes wide to watch the distant battle between Mo Xiaobai and the spear-wielding Murloc leader. At almost the instant of the collision, the spear-wielding Murloc leader's spear was knocked away by Mo Xiaobai's sword, and it flew backwards while spitting out blood. Seeing this scene, the spear-wielding Murloc leaders all opened their eyes wide. This is impossible. In the next moment, they saw Mo Xiaobai dodge the spear-wielding Murloc leader's bloody throw, and use Blade Walk followed by 3 consecutive slashes, cleanly beheading the spear-wielding Murloc leader. Seeing this scene, the spear-wielding Murloc leaders all opened their eyes wide, and they were a bit dumbfounded. How could he be so strong? He was clearly only a 2-apertured rank 8 cultivator. So how could his combat strength be so strong. Mo Xiao Bai's movements were too swift, and they didn't even have time to rescue him. He must have used up a lot of origin power. Kill him. The hammer-wielding, spear-wielding Merlock leader watched as the spear-wielding Merlock leader was beheaded, and its fish eyes were filled with a bloody light. With a roar, a faint golden light flickered on its body, and its body suddenly broke free from its restraints, turning into an afterimage as it charged towards Mo Xiao Bai. The spear-wielding Merlock warrior also had a golden light flickering on his body as he charged towards Mo Xiao Bai. Rare origin skill, Berserk Charge. Seeing the two spear-wielding Merlock leaders charge towards him, Mo Xiao Bai licked his lips and grinned. He unhurriedly took out a bottle of medicine that flickered with a faint white light. Level 2 Origin Power Recovery Medicine, Flawless Grade. He downed the medicine in one gulp. Originally, he had used up a lot of origin power in order to quickly kill the spear-wielding Merlock leader. Now, there was only a third of his origin power left, and it quickly began to recover. Afterwards, when the two spear-wielding Merlock leaders charged towards him, his body turned into a streak of blade light, appearing several meters away and dodging the attack. Seeing Mo Xiao Bai drink the medicine, the two spear-wielding Merlock leaders opened their eyes wide. They roared as they charged towards Mo Xiao Bai once again, but there was a strong binding force on their legs, and they were immediately pulled away by Mo Xiao Bai. At this moment, Mo Xiao Bai used Blade Walk 4 times in a row and appeared beside the spear-wielding Merlock leader. His cold voice sounded, "Kill this one first. Chi 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 chi." The 4 streaks of blade aura from Blade Walk tore through the air, chopping towards the spear-wielding Merlock leader. The spear-wielding Merlock leader opened its eyes wide, roaring as it dodged. The spear-wielding Merlock leader on the side also turned around to provide support. Just as the spear-wielding Merlock leader dodged, the distant Yin Shui stood on top of a rock, a cold light flashing through her icy blue eyes. She drew her longbow, and 3 frost arrows appeared in her hands. Chi-chi. The moment the 3 frost arrows were shot out, another 3 frost arrows appeared and were shot out as well. 6 sharp frost arrows spiraled towards the spear-wielding Merlock leader, dragging a long white mist behind them. Forest in the distance also clenched his wand tightly. A gentle breeze drifted from his body, and his emerald green hair danced in the wind. His handsome face looked serious. A gust of wind turned into a light green giant eagle. The giant eagle screeched and quickly flew towards the spear-wielding Merlock leader, forcing him to turn around. Feeling a fatal threat, the spear-wielding Merlock leader roared as he waved his blade, forming a black blade screen in front of him. Clang, clang, clang. The blade light condensed by Blade Walk. The frost arrows collided with the blade screen, making a clang sound, and, at the same time, a faint sizzling sound could be heard. When the blade screen fell, and the attack dissipated, the spear-wielding Merlock leader had a frost arrow stuck in his shoulder, and frost had spread out from his chest, which made his movement stagnate for a moment. Mo Xiao Bai naturally would not let go of such a good opportunity. His heavy sword flashed with a white light, and the sword light flashed as it slashed towards the spear-wielding Merlock leader. Clang, clang, clang. The spear-wielding Merlock leader gritted his teeth and roared as he blocked the 3 consecutive slashes. His body staggered back, and the frost on his chest spread even more. Mo Xiao Bai stepped forward again and used a wild heavy strike. Chi! The blood light slashed through the spear-wielding Merlock leader's right hand and directly cut off his arm. As the spear-wielding Merlock leader screamed, a frost arrow pierced through his neck, interrupting his scream. The remaining 3 spear-wielding Merlock leaders watched as another of their companions was killed, and their eyes suddenly opened wide. The 3 spear-wielding Merlock leaders had the intention to retreat. Mo Xiao Bai turned his head and looked at the spear-wielding Merlock leader and the spear-wielding Merlock leader who were planning to retreat. He sneered, "Forest, this guy is yours. Yin Shui, let's go deal with the other 2. Don't let them escape." Forrest looked at the spear-wielding Merlock leader and smiled elegantly. He said softly, "Leave it to me." Yin Shui nodded her head, and her slender legs lightly stepped on the ground. Her body flashed, and a frost arrow was shot towards the two spear-wielding Merlock leaders who were trying to retreat. Mo Xiao turned into a flash of sword light again, and rushed towards the two spear-wielding Merlock leaders. After two spear-wielding Merlock leaders were killed in a row, the spear-wielding Merlock leader and spear-wielding Merlock leader were already terrified. The two of them blocked Mo Xiao's attacks as they tried to retreat into the lake. However, Yin Shui's frost arrows were all-pervasive. As long as they were slightly grazed by the arrows, the powerful frost energy would spread and their movements would gradually become slower. Before they could get close to northern Blue Lake, a powerful frost arrow was shot out, and it crashed heavily into the spear-wielding Merlock leader's armor. He stumbled, and before he could do anything, a white sword light slashed across his neck, killing him. The spear-wielding Merlock leader didn't last long either, and he was quickly killed by Mo Xiao and Yin Shui. They turned their heads to look at the spear-wielding Merlock leader. The spear-wielding Merlock leader was chasing after Wood Forest, but Wood Forest had the wind element, so he was extremely fast. He was able to dodge the spear-wielding Merlock leader's attacks from afar. The spear-wielding Merlock leader was flustered, and many wounds had already appeared on his body. At that moment, he heard the spear-wielding Merlock leader's screams of death. He turned his head to look. He saw that all the spear-wielding Merlock leaders were dead, and he was the only one left. He was immediately dumbfounded. His teammates were all dead, so how was he supposed to fight by himself? When he saw Mo Xiao and Yin Shui approaching him, he gulped, his eyes filled with fear. "Just you wait," he yelled, and then turned around to run. At that moment, a series of frost arrows blocked his escape path. Mo Xiao appeared in front of him, and a series of heavy attacks forced the spear-wielding Merlock leader to retreat. In the end, he was killed by Wood Forest's Windblade. When Mo Xiao and the other two killed all the spear-wielding Merlock leaders, Kong Xiu-ran and Li Mu'er were also slaughtering Merlock leaders. Dozens of elite Merlock warriors' corpses littered the empty ground. All the elite Merlock warriors wanted to attack Kong Xiu-ran, but they realized that they couldn't even break through his rock armor. They were all dumbfounded. They could only be trapped by Li Mu'er's wood element entanglement, and then their heads were all smashed by Kong Xiu-ran. The remaining elite Merlock warriors saw that the situation wasn't right, and immediately ran away. Yin Shui and Wood Forest killed some of the slower Merlock, and the entire encampment fell silent. The fisherman in the cage and the middle-aged Merlock sitting outside the cage looked at the Merlock corpses all over the ground, and were silent for a long time before they came to their senses. "We're saved. We're saved. Thank you. Thank you, benefactors. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, we would have been eaten by those damned Merlock." All the fishermen cried bitterly, and were deeply grateful to Mo Xiao and the rest. They thought that they were going to die, but they didn't expect that they would be saved one day. Li Mu'er looked at the crying fishermen, and pity flashed across her eyes. She walked over and opened the cages, and all the fishermen walked out of the cages immediately. Li Mu'er looked at the injuries on their bodies, and waved her right hand lightly. Streaks of green light flashed and entered their bodies. These fishermen were only on the first aperture, and they might even be ordinary people in the body refining realm. Their injuries recovered in an instant. Everyone was once again deeply grateful to Li Mu'er for her help. "Goddess, you're a goddess." "Ah, thank you, goddess." Hearing the fisherman's gratitude, Li Mu'er blushed. She waved her hand embarrassedly. "Don't say that. How can you call me a goddess with this level of skill?" Seeing Li Mu'er's embarrassed look, Mo Xiao, Wood Forest, and Kong Xiu-ran laughed. Yin Shui, on the other hand, didn't care as usual. After saving the people, Mo Xiao turned to look at the largest hut and squinted his eyes slightly. He saw a ray of red light in the hut, and it was quite bright. Chapter 129. After comforting the grateful fisherman, Kong Xiao Ran said softly. These fishmen's armor and weapons are pretty good. Why don't we take them too? We can sell them for some credits. As a child of an ordinary family, Kong Xiao Ran was naturally more sensitive to these spoils of war than Mu Lin, Yin Shui, and Li Mu'er. And Mo Xiao Bai looked at the armor on the ground and nodded. That makes sense. Let's take them. These weapons and armor were at least of the elite grade. They could be considered an unexpected windfall. They dealt with the corpse and even found a small spatial ring on the body of the fishman leader. There were many rare materials inside, including some precious metals from the bottom of the lake, black pearls, blue lustergrass, tigerfish, and so on. Although the spatial ring was not big, it was filled to the brim with rare materials. Mo Xiao Bai and the others divided the spoils of war among the fishmen's corpses. Mo Xiao Bai had gained close to 100,000 credits from this wave alone. It was much faster than the credits obtained from hunting in the school's void domain. Mo Xiao Bai looked at the dazzling red light flashing in the huts in the distance. There were also many light red lights in the huts. He said softly, "Let's go inside the huts and take a look. There might be something good inside." Mu Lin looked at the messy huts and frowned. Is there really anything good in such a dirty place? The fishman civilization was very simple and crude. They did not even pay attention to hygiene. Just looking at the outside of the huts, one could tell that there was nothing good in them. Mo Xiaobai smiled. I think there might be something. Let's take a look first. Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Mu Lin's eyes lit up. He quickly nodded. Since Xiaobai has said so, let's take a look. Mo Xiaobai rolled his eyes and said, let's take a look at the leader's hut first. He took the lead and walked towards the largest hut. Wood Forest and the others also followed. The hut that the 5 leaders were in was about 50 to 60 meters wide. It wasn't small, and it wasn't particularly shabby compared to a small hut. After opening the door, Mo Xiaobai smelled a strong, fishy, and rotten smell. He couldn't help but frown. The space inside the shack wasn't small, but it was very dirty and messy. There were traces of water on the ground, and wet water plants were casually spread out on the ground to form beds. There were a total of 5 beds made of water plants, which should be where the 5 fishermen heads slept. In the middle of the hut, there was a huge dark brown stone table. On the table were some black stones and a flat white shell. Mo Xiaobai's gaze swept across the room. The first thing he saw was the white shell. It was this shell that had a dazzling red light flowing on it. What is this? The white shell was placed on the dark brown table in the middle of the room. The contrast was too obvious. Everyone immediately turned their attention to the shell. Just take a look and you'll know. Mo Xiaobai was also curious. What was it that had such a red light? He walked over. Coming to the stone table, Mo Xiaobai picked up the white shell. The shell was about the size of 2 palms. There were lines drawn on it with black handwriting. There were also many red dots and blackened areas. Seeing this picture, Wood Forest raised his eyebrows slightly. What is this? Yin Shui frowned slightly. A trace of doubt flashed through her icy blue eyes. It looks like a map. Hearing Yin Shui's words, Mo Xiaobai and the others were stunned. Then they realized that it did look like a map. It really does look like a map. Where's this map from? Lemur blinked her eyes curiously. What are these red dots? And those blackened areas? They discussed for a while, but couldn't figure it out. Then they decided not to think about it. Mo Xiaobai put away the things and smiled. Let's take it out and ask Li Shu and the others. After all, they are residents here. They might know where this map is. Okay, the few of them nodded. All right, hurry up and pack up the things here. Take away the valuable things too. There were a few huge shelves beside the bed. They looked like storage boxes. In the corner of the room, there was a huge shelf with some things on it. After they packed up the things in the shelves and on the shelf, they went to the other huts. Some of the ordinary Murloc huts had transcendent materials, while others didn't. After searching through dozens of huts, they found some more transcendent materials. After the distribution, there would be more than 10,000 credits in his account. Mo Xiaobai alone had earned more than 100,000 credits in this encampment. It was a huge profit. After packing up, Mo Xiaobai and the others walked toward the fishermen who were waiting anxiously. Seeing Mo Xiao Bai and the others walk over, the fisherman immediately begged, "Benefactors, can you please take us away from this island? Our fishing boat has been destroyed. We can go back now." "That's right, benefactors, I beg you. Otherwise, we will still die here. Please, I beg you." Hearing their pleas, Mo Xiao Bai and the others looked at each other. Then, Yin Shui said softly, "Send them back. Didn't Brother Lu Qing say that there would be a reward for saving the captives?" Although it wasn't a mission from the Academy, the Adventurers Guild had issued missions about saving captives. Recently, too many fishermen had been captured by Murloc. "I think so." The few of them discussed for a while. Then, Mo Xiao Bai smiled at the fishermen who were begging them. "Come with us. We will take you back." Hearing Mo Xiao Bai's words, the fishermen immediately revealed pleasantly surprised smiles. They were deeply grateful to the few of them. Then Mo Xiao Bai and the others returned to the place where they disembarked. At the same time, they contacted Li Shu and asked Li Shu to sail the boat over. Soon, the huge fishing boat approached the island. Mu Forest used the wind element to transport the fishermen back and forth. In a few minutes, everyone was brought up to the deck. After getting on the deck, the fishermen wailed. Some were sad that their companions had been eaten by the Murloc, while others were happy that they had survived. Seeing the fishermen, Li Shu and the other crew members' eyes turned red. Wasn't this the last time they met One Eye? If it wasn't for Mo Xiao by helping them take revenge, they wouldn't have been able to do so now. Mo Xiao Bai and the others looked at the fishermen in silence. The Azure Empire seemed powerful, but in reality, the people at the bottom didn't have powerful strength. They could still be in danger at any time. Mo Xiao Bai was deeply touched by this situation. Back in Pingxi Town, didn't Uncle Ning, Xiao Ran, and the young boys and girls who were sacrificed also die mysteriously because of a statue in the Void God cult? Without strength, they couldn't live peacefully even in the Azure Empire. Li Shu and the crew members comforted the fishermen one by one and helped them settle down. Soon, some of the fishermen were settled down in the cabin and went to rest. Ji Fei Bai, who was protecting Li Shu and the others, sighed. He glanced at Mo Xiao Bai and the others and said, "How are the Murloc? Did you kill those bastards?" Mu Sunlin nodded lightly and said, "None of the leaders managed to escape. Only a few small fries managed to escape." Hearing this, Ji Fei Bai nodded his head and coldly snorted, saying, "The fishmen should be exterminated." Li Mu rolled her eyes. How could it be so simple? If they could really exterminate the Murloc, the Azure Empire would have done it long ago. Sigh. Kong Shou ran sighed softly. At this moment, Ji Fei Bai thought of something. He rubbed his little hands and smiled at Mu Forest. Forest, my share. Mu Forest saw Ji Fei Bai's expression and couldn't help but chuckle. He threw a pile of Murloc body parts and materials to Ji Fei Bai. "Don't worry. How could I forget about your share?" Although it wasn't as much as the main force, Mo Xiao Bai, Yin Shui, and Mu Forest, it was still quite a lot. So much. Ji Fei Bai's face was full of pleasant surprise. He nimbly put away the items and smiled happily. Just chatting with Uncle Li and the others on the ship and eating melon seeds can earn me so many credits. In the future, no one can steal the job of a bodyguard from me. Mo Xiao Bai looked at Ji Fei Bai, who was talking like a salted fish, and was speechless. Who was the one who didn't want to be a bodyguard? At this moment, Li Shu walked out. His face was still a little heavy, and his eyes were a little red. It was obvious that he still hadn't recovered from the emotions of being a fisherman. He looked at Mo Xiao Bai and the others and smiled. "Xiao Bai, I have to thank you on behalf of those fishermen. They aren't very strong and can barely make a living at Beiqing Lake. Some of them are even the pillars of their families. If they died in the hands of those damned Murloc, their families would have collapsed. Thank you for saving them and their families." Mo Xiao Bai saw Li Shu thanking them so solemnly and quickly waved his hand. "Li Shu, you don't have to do this. We are just doing what we should do." Uncle Li took a deep breath, nodded, and said, "Should we go back first? Now that there are close to 10 more people, the amount of vegetables and fruits might not be enough. Also, those fishermen are in a bad state right now." and Mo Xiaobai nodded. Then let's go back first. It just so happened that there was still a mission to save the fishermen. After bringing them back, he would turn in the mission first. Li Shu revealed a trace of a smile and turned to the cabin. Boys, let's go back. A response came from the cabin, and the fishing boat began to move slowly. At this moment, Mo Xiaobai thought of something and took out the shell that he found in the Murloc leader's shack. He handed the shell to Li Shu and asked, Li Shu, take a look. What is this? When Uncle Li heard Mo Xiaobai's words, he took the shell in confusion and lowered his head to look at it. After taking a look, Li Shu frowned slightly and said in surprise, This is a map? A map of North Qing Lake? Hearing Li Shu's words, Mo Xiaobai and the others' eyes lit up. They had guessed before that this could be a map. Where's the area on this map? Mo Xiaobai and the others went over. Li Shu pointed at the bottom of the map and said, This is the shoreline of North Qing Lake. His thick finger pointed at a concave area and said, This map isn't detailed enough, but there shouldn't be any problems. If I'm not wrong, this area should be the location of Northridge Town. As he spoke, Li Shu's thick finger slid along the black line. It spans about 300 kilometers. Any further, and we'll be in the area of Red Orchid City. He looked at Mo Xiaobai with wide eyes and asked curiously, Where did you get this map? It's drawn on a shell, and it's so rough. Mo Xiaobai had a strange expression. We found this in the merfolk's camp. It was in the shack of the merfolk leaders. What? Hearing this, Li Shu's eyes widened and he exclaimed, A map from the merfolk's camp? Yes, but I've never heard of merfolk drawing maps. Li Shu frowned and was confused. Mo Xiaobai and the others were stunned when they heard this. Mu Forest asked, Didn't the merfolk draw maps in the past? Li Shu shook his head. At least I haven't. Everyone looked at each other. Then why did they suddenly draw maps? Also, were those red dots and black areas? Mo Xiaobai pointed curiously at the dozen or so scattered red dots on the shell map, as well as the areas that were painted black. Li Shu looked at the map again. He looked at the red dots on the map, and then his thick finger started from Northridge Town. He drew a line and landed on a red dot. He raised his grayish-brown eyebrows slightly and pointed at the red dot with his finger. This should be the island we're on now. Hearing this, Mo Xiaobai and the others widened their eyes and held their breaths. They looked at each other and saw a trace of surprise in each other's eyes. Ji Fei swallowed his saliva and said with surprise, Could it be that these red dots are the merfolk's camp? Li Shu's eyes shook and he said, It's possible. This time, even Yin Shui couldn't remain calm. Just one merfolk's camp gave them 100,000 credits. There were more than 10 of them, more than 1,000,000 credits. Once they spent all these credits, they would definitely be able to improve greatly in a short period of time. The way they looked at Mo Xiaobai changed. Mu Forest patted Mo Xiaobai's shoulder, and his elegant face was filled with excitement. Luckily, Xiaobai, you said to go take a look at the shack. Otherwise, we would have missed out on a great opportunity. Li Mu'er nodded her head like a chick pecking at rice. Even Kong Xiu ran nodded. Yin Shui looked at Mo Xiaobai, and her icy blue eyes flashed with brilliance. Mo Xiaobai didn't expect the harvest to be so great. No wonder it was something with such a dazzling red light. He smiled and waved his hand. I was just lucky. Chapter 130. Seeing Mo Xiaobai's calm appearance, the few of them felt unbearably angry and sour. Who wouldn't want to have this kind of luck? Mo Xiaobai asked curiously, What about the blackened areas? He pointed at the blackened areas on the map. Some were near the lake, and some were near the lake. Li Shu looked at the blackened areas and frowned. I'm not sure. The blackened areas are not evenly distributed. There doesn't seem to be any similarities. Seeing that Li Shu didn't know either, Mo Xiaobai frowned. Then he smiled and said, Since Li Shu doesn't know either, then forget it. Let's go to the other mermen's camps and see what's going on. Mu Forest nodded. It's best if we can catch a merman leader and interrogate him. Everyone nodded in agreement at Mu Forest's words. Then let's go back first. Mo Xiaobai said. Li Shu returned the shell map to Mo Xiaobai and went to work in the cabin. Mo Xiaobai and the others went back to their rooms to rest. After all, They had used up a lot of energy in this battle. The next morning, the morning dew drifted and the sun rose from the east. After a night of sailing, the fishing boat finally returned to North Mountain Town's pier. On the deck, Mo Xiaobai's gaze swept across the many fishing boats docked at the dock and then looked at the dock square, where there were only a few pedestrians. He softly said, "It's much quieter than the last time I came." Li Shu sighed and said, "The mermen have been causing a lot of trouble recently. Normal fishermen won't go out to fish, or else." He glanced at the excited fisherman who was saved by Mo Xiaobai and the others. When the middle-aged merman who was rescued heard this, he smiled bitterly and said, "Those of us who left the lake now have a lot of pressure at home." Mo Xiaobai nodded in understanding. Mu Forest chuckled and said, "It's good that you came back alive." The merman and the other fishermen nodded and thanked Mo Xiaobai and the others again. They had thanked him many times since yesterday. Mo Xiaobai and the others were already used to it. The fishing boat was docked at the dock. After disembarking, they arrived at the Adventurers Guild. The Adventurers Guild in Northridge Town was similar to the Adventurers Guild that Mo Xiaobai had visited in Pingxi Town. Inside the spacious hall, the screens that could be seen after entering were all about murlocs. Mo Xiaobai looked around and said, "Let's find a place to register first." The mission to save the fishermen required the fishermen to register. Because of the overflow of murlocs, there were many adventurers who came to hand in missions. The staff was very busy, and there was not even an empty counter. Mo Xiaobai and the others could only wait in their seats after getting a number. At this moment, Mo Xiaobai heard a few adventurers discussing beside him. "Have you heard? The top students from the Big Three and the Imperial Guard have all come to North Green Lake. Many of the islands have been cleared. I heard. At this rate, the situation will improve in about half a month, right?" "Yeah, that's about it. I wonder why the murlocs are making such a big fuss this time." I know that." At this moment, a rough-looking rabbit man chuckled and said mysteriously, "What's going on? Tell us." When the others heard this, their eyes lit up and they turned their heads to look. The rabbit man smiled and said, "I heard that the murlocs seem to be looking for something this time." Looking for something? Everyone was stunned. Even Mo Xiaobai and the others who were listening curiously in the distance looked at each other. "What are the murlocs looking for?" someone asked curiously. The rabbit man rolled his eyes. "How would I know? I only heard it from a friend of mine. He said that the murlocs seem to be looking for something this time, so they're making a ruckus in every region of North Green Lake. I heard that someone obtained a map of North Green Lake from the murlocs and came to this conclusion after comparing it with the map." "The murlocs have a map?" Everyone was dumbfounded. In the distance, Mo Xiaobai and the others widened their eyes slightly as their pupils constricted. "Map." They immediately recalled the shell map. Ji Feibai said softly, "Those blackened areas? Could it be that they've already searched the area?" Mo Xiaobai and the others looked at each other. Mo Xiaobai took a deep breath and nodded. "That's possible." This also explained why these areas were blackened, even though they didn't have anything in common. Moreover, the blackened area was very messy. It was scattered all over the place. That's not right. If they're just looking for something, why are the murlocs so violent? "I don't know about that." The rabbit man shrugged. "I'm not a murlocs. How would I know what those animals are thinking? It's better to wait for those powerful people to find the answer." When everyone heard this, they clicked their tongues and rolled their eyes. Mo Xiaobai and the others fell into silence. After a moment of silence, Li Muir asked curiously, "What do you guys think the murlocs are looking for? An ancient divine item? An evil god's relic? Or some other treasure?" Seeing the sparkle in Li Muir's eyes, Ji Feibai rolled his eyes. "Stop joking. Look at the murlocs. What do they know about ancient divine items? Then what are they looking for? Maybe it's some fresh delicacy?" "You're joking." Hearing this, Li Muir was immediately dissatisfied. Mo Xiaobai and the others couldn't help but laugh. Yin Shui said softly, "Let's go to the other murlocs and see what's going on." Mo Xiaobai and Mu Forest nodded. "We'll ask the leader of the murlocs." Soon, it was their turn to register. Mo Xiaobai and the others came to the front of the staff. The staff was a gentle-looking elf lady. She looked at Mo Xiaobai and the others and smiled. "Hello, may I know what mission you're here for?" Mo Xiaobai asked a few fishermen to come forward. He smiled and said, "These are the fishermen that we rescued from the Murloc's base. We're here to complete this mission." Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, the elf lady was stunned. Her eyes widened slightly as she looked at Mo Xiaobai and the others. "You rescued them from the Murloc's base?" There was a hint of disbelief in her tone. There must be a leader in the Murloc's base. Moreover, with the Murlocs overflowing, the leader should be at least rank 3. Moreover, there must be more than one Murloc leader in the base. Coupled with a large group of elite Murlocs, they must be very powerful. Mo Xiaobai and the others looked too young. How could they possibly rescue the fishermen from a few rank 3 Murlocs and a group of elite Murlocs? She couldn't help but be suspicious. Seeing the elf lady's disbelief, the middle-aged merman quickly said, "Young lady, we really were rescued from the Murloc's base by Mo Xiaobai and the others. If it weren't for them, we would have been eaten by now." Yes, young lady. Mo Xiaobai and the others are very powerful." Hearing the fisherman say this at the same time, the elf lady looked at Mo Xiaobai and the others. At this moment, Move Forest took out the head of a Murloc leader and said, "This is the head of the Murloc leader we killed in the base. You can find someone to take a look." Seeing the Murloc leader's ferocious bloodstained head, the elf lady's pupil shrank. As a staff member of the Adventurers Guild, she had seen many corpses and was very familiar with Murlocs. Such a huge head was not something an ordinary Murloc would have. "Also, this is my medal. My name is Move Forest. I'm a new student of the Spiritual Heart Academy." Saying this, Move Forest took out a green medal and handed it to the staff member. The staff member looked at the medal and was surprised. "You're students of the Spiritual Heart Academy?" Mo Xiaobai smiled and said, "We're not. We're new students of the Akatsuki Academy." Mo Xiaobai pointed at Yin Shui, who had a calm expression. The elf lady looked at the Murloc leader's head and then looked at the fishermen and their medals. Then she nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Then let's register." The rescued fishermen needed to register so that they could receive their rewards. After the registration, Mo Xiaobai and the others each received a reward of 3,000 origin crystals and 15 adventurer points. Mo Xiaobai's adventurer registration was already bronze. If he wanted to upgrade it to silver, he would need 1,000 points. It was still far away. Seeing that Mo Xiaobai's adventurer medal was bronze, Move Forest and the others were envious. Even the elf lady couldn't help but look at him. Such a young bronze adventurer was very rare. After completing the registration and the mission rewards, the elf lady returned the adventurer medal to Mo Xiaobai and the others. Then she looked at the Murloc leader's head that Move Forest took out and said with a smile, "Do you guys want to submit the mission to kill the Murloc leader?" Move Forest smiled and put away the Murloc leader's head. "No need. Thank you." Although the reward for killing the Murloc leader was very good, Mo Xiaobai and the others naturally wanted to submit the mission to the Academy. They could receive both the Academy and the Adventurers Guild's rewards. After the registration, they left the Adventurers Guild. The rescued fishermen left after thanking them profusely. It was almost noon by the time they left. Mo Xiaobai and the others brought Li Shu, Lu Qing, and the others to the original food restaurant to celebrate their harvest. They rested for the afternoon. The next morning, the fishing boat set off again in the morning fog, heading towards the red dot on the shell map. For Mo Xiaobai and the others, that was a place where they could earn a lot of credits. Along the way, perhaps because the Murlocs were being hunted, there were fewer and fewer Murlocs that came looking for them. There were only a few of them. At noon, the originally blue sky gradually became covered with dark clouds. A bone-chilling wind blew across the surface of the lake, stirring up ripples. A light drizzle fell from the sky. The rain became heavier. Mo Xiaobai and the others stood in the cabin and looked at the hazy lake outside the window. They frowned slightly. This damn weather. Li Shu smacked his lips. He held a cup of hot tea in his wide hands. White steam rose from the cup. He grinned. Xiao Bai, don't you guys want a cup of ginger tea? It'll warm you up. Li Mu Air raised her hand with a smile. I want a cup. Give me a cup too. I want a cup too. The others all spoke up. One of the crew members poured a cup of ginger tea for Mo Xiao Bai and the others. Mo Xiao Bai held the cup of tea and took a sip. A warm current flowed into his stomach, dispelling the slight chill. With their current cultivation and physical strength, although the weather was bone-chilling, it did not affect them much. At this moment, Mo Xiao Bai opened his eyes slightly. He looked at a black in the hazy fog and said, I think we're there. We're there. Mu Sunlin was enjoying a sip of ginger tea when he heard Mo Xiao Bai's words. His eyes narrowed, and he raised his head to look ahead. The island on a map? Yin Shui's icy blue eyes looked at the black dot in the distance. She nodded slightly. Yes. As the fishing boat approached the island, when they were about 1 kilometer away, Mo Xiao Bai and the others could finally see the island clearly. Mo Xiao Bai squinted his eyes and looked at the black and red rays in the distance. Was it similar to the island they encountered last time? It seemed to be slightly weaker. Mo Xiao Bai realized that the black rays were not as strong as the island they encountered last time. It seemed that the danger was not great. Are we going now? It's raining so heavily. Li Shu was a little worried. Mo Xiao Bai heard him and chuckled. Don't worry, Li Shu. This rain is nothing to us. Mu Lin nodded, yes. As he spoke, he turned to look at Ji Fei Bai. Fei Bai, I'll have to trouble you on the boat. Ji Fei Bai grinned. No problem. Drinking hot tea on the boat could earn them credits. How wonderful was that? Mo Xiao Bai and the others walked out of the cabin. The cold rain mixed with the cold wind hit their faces. Mo Xiao Bai suddenly felt a chill. However, his body was too strong. This little bit of cold did not affect him at all. Li Muir, who was beside him, shivered slightly and sighed. It's a little cold. Are you okay? Yin Shui glanced at her. I'm fine, I'm fine. The crew lowered the wooden boat for them. After the few of them boarded the wooden boat, they moved towards the island. Although the lake was not calm due to the heavy rain, it did not affect Mo Xiao Bai and the others. With the wind element of Mu Lin, it was still possible to affect the strong winds nearby. In the wind and waves, the small wooden boat approached the island in a short while. This island was smaller than the one they saw yesterday. It also seemed to be more barren. There were only scattered trees on the island. Most of the area was barren land filled with rocks. Mo Xiao Bai and the others stopped the small wooden boat at a place that was against the wind. Then, Mo Xiao Bai reached out and lifted the small wooden boat onto the shore to prevent it from being blown away by the wind and waves. Then, the few of them boarded the island. Due to the heavy rain, the fog on the island was very thick. Visibility was not high. However, it did not affect Mo Xiao Bai. He could look at the good luck and bad luck lines to find the fishmen. Let's go this way. Mo Xiao Bai led Mu Lin and the others towards the inner part of the island that was filled with rocks. Chapter 131. On the wilderness near the edge of the island, there were rocks everywhere. The rain fell on the rocks and created a white mist. Mo Xiao Bai and the others stood on a high ground and looked at the shack in the distance. In Mo Xiao Bai's eyes, there were many lines of bad luck and good luck intertwined in the shack area. In the largest shack, there were only 4 lines of bad luck, which was slightly less than the last time. Let's go closer and take a look. Mu Forest said softly. Okay. The few of them slowly moved towards the merman's camp. After getting close to the merman's camp, they saw the scene inside. In the drifting heavy rain, outside the hut, the fishmen were having a carnival. They were dancing a strange dance, and no one knew what they were yelling. The scene was like a group of demons dancing. Obviously, they had completely let go of their natural instincts in the rain. On the side of the camp, there was a cage. In the cage, there were a few people from the Azure Empire. They were curled up together in the rain and trembling as they watched the merman dance. What do you think? Do you want to go? Mu Forest turned to look at Mo Xiao Bai. Mo Xiao Bai looked at the huge shack. There were 4 lines of bad luck flowing inside. They were all dark gray and dark gray. Although it was dangerous, it was still manageable. He nodded lightly and said, Let's go. After he finished speaking, Yin Shui had already taken out her frost longbow. She knocked an arrow on the bow and shot it out. Whoosh! The arrow of frost pierced through the rain and instantly pierced through the neck of a merman who was waving his arms and had a ferocious mouth. It looked like it was twitching. The merman warrior who was twitching didn't even make a sound. His body stiffened and he fell to the ground. When the merman warriors nearby saw this scene, their twitching body stopped and they turned to look at the merman warrior who had fallen to the ground. After seeing the frost arrow slowly dissipating on the merman warrior's neck and the blood on the ground, the merman warriors suddenly opened their eyes wide. After a moment of silence, a few Murloc warriors suddenly screamed. The screams attracted the attention of the merfolk who were immersed in their revelry. They stopped dancing and turned to look at the merfolk warriors who had fallen to the ground. Then, the Murloc warriors looked around vigilantly. At this moment, a blade light flashed through the rain and appeared at the edge of the encampment. Before the two elite Murlocs could react, the two blade light flashed, and the two elite Murlocs' heads flew into the sky. Their blood dyed the rain red. Seeing Mo Xiaobai charge over, many of the fishmen warriors immediately screamed. They angrily took out their weapons and charged at Mo Xiaobai while shouting. In the cage, the citizen of the Imperium, who had been shivering, suddenly widened his eyes. Looking at the hazy figure in the rain far away, he was so moved that he almost cried. Someone is here to save us. That's great. Someone is here to save us. In the largest hut of the merfolk encampment, there was a candle burning on the stone table in the middle of the room, which was dark due to the heavy rain. A man wearing a black robe and a hood was sitting on the main seat. His face was hidden under the hood. There were 3 merfolk leaders sitting on the side. The merfolk leaders were taller than the man in the black robe and hood. At this moment, they were a bit timid and submissive. The man in the black robe said with a hoarse and arrogant voice, "Your actions are too big. Now, you have attracted the attention of the Imperium. Master is very dissatisfied." Hearing this, the 3 merfolk leaders immediately shrunk their necks. Seeing the reaction of the 3 merfolk leaders, the man in the black robe shook his long robe slightly. He seemed to be a bit impatient. His white and slender fingers lightly tapped on the stone table. After a moment of silence, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "If you still can't find the place, you should know the consequences." Hearing this, a trace of fear flashed through the bulging eyes of the 3 Murlocs. The leader of the 3 Murlocs, whose upper body was naked and whose muscles were extremely bulging, responded with a rough voice, "Yes, sir. We will definitely not let you down." "Humph." The man in the black robe snorted and was about to continue speaking. At this moment, a noise came from outside the hut. "What's happening outside?" The man in the black robe's voice was a bit cold. The 3 merfolk leaders trembled slightly. Then, a merfolk leader wearing blue leather armor stood up. "Sir, I'll go out and take a look." In the encampment, after Mo Xiao by Yin Shui, Mu Forest, Kong Xiu Ran, and Li Muer also approached the encampment. In a short period of time, more than 20 elite merfolk warriors fell on the ground. Their blood dyed the nearby ground red. At this moment, a tall Murloc leader walked out of the hut. The merfolk leader was wearing blue leather armor. His body was slimmer than the average merfolk. His hands were already hanging down to his knees. After seeing Mo Xiao Bai and the others kill the elite merfolk warriors, the merfolk leader was instantly enraged. He roared and took down the longbow hanging on his back. Bow and arrows were shot out one after another. Shoo! 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 The bow and arrows pierced through the rain and shot towards Mo Xiao Bai and the others. Mo Xiao Bai waved the blood-patterned heavy sword in his hand and deflected the bow and arrows. His arm was a bit sore from the impact. He looked at the merfolk leader in the distance and grinned. "I'll go deal with him." While he was talking, Yin Shui had already changed her target. Her body flashed and dodged the bow and arrows. Then, ice arrows were shot towards the merfolk leader. Feeling the formidable might of the frost arrows, the pupils of the head Murloc shrank, and it roared a few times. Its body full of explosive power moved, turning into an afterimage and disappearing from its original place, dodging the frost arrows. After dodging the frost arrow, he once again looked at Yin Shui, who had a cold expression on her face. Alarm bells rang in his heart as he became more vigilant. He was a strong warrior from the Empire. At this moment, a blade light pierced through the rain, and the elite merfolk leaders group and quickly rushed in front of him. A trace of shock flashed in his eyes. So fast. Another one. He immediately opened his mouth and began to roar in a gibberish. In the hut, the two merfolk leaders heard the roar of the merfolk leader in blue leather armor and immediately stood up. The half-naked Murloc leader incongruously bowed to the black-robed man. "Sir, please forgive us." The blue-skinned man said there was a strong warrior attacking outside. Hearing this, the black-robed man sat on the chair and slowly said, "Then you can go." The two merfolk leaders immediately turned around and walked out of the hut. The black-robed man was the only one left in the hut. The rough candlelight flickered in the dark room. After a moment of silence, the black-robed man reached out and gently fanned himself in front of his hood. He then muttered in disgust, "Lowly merfolk." As he spoke, he slowly stood up. His body turned into a black mist and dissipated. Behind the hut, the black mist slowly condensed and turned into the black-robed man's appearance. He looked in the direction of the encampment through the rain. After seeing Li Muir and Kong Xiu ran crushing and killing the elite merfolk warriors in the wood forest, the black-robed man was silent for a moment. He then snorted lightly and slowly turned around. He slowly walked into the rain and finally merged into the dark lake water. After the merfolk leader in blue leather armor roared, the heavy sword in Mo Xiao Bai's hand turned into 3 streaks of sword light and slashed towards the merfolk leader. The merfolk leader let out a low cry. Light blue light flashed all over his body, and his speed increased sharply. He retreated and dodged Mo Xiao Bai's attack. Rare grade origin skill, flowing water acceleration. Just as he dodged the attack, 6 frost arrows covered the head of the Murloc. The frost aura and sharp arrow intent circulated, causing the scales all over the merfolk leader's body to stand up. He waved the longbow in his hand like an iron rod and blocked the 6 frost arrows. Clang, 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 chi. The last frost arrow streaked across the merfolk leader's arm, causing a smear of fresh blood. Frost slowly appeared on the wound. At this moment, 2 more merfolk leaders walked out of the hut. One of them was bare-chested and had bulging muscles all over his body. He held a giant long-handled warhammer in his hand. The other was wearing iron gray armor and held a battle axe in his hand. When the 2 merfolk saw Mo Xiao Bai and Yin Shui chasing after the blue-skinned merfolk, they were instantly enraged. "Damned humans! You're courting death! Kill!" The 2 merfolk leaders roared as they raised their weapons. Their bodies turned into streaks of light as they charged at Mo Xiao Bai. They hadn't even reached Mo Xiao Bai's side when frost arrows and wind blades cut through the curtain of rain, greeting the 2 merfolk leaders. The 2 merfolk leaders were forced to defend themselves. While the 2 merfolk leaders were blocking the frost arrows and wind blades, Mo Xiao Bai launched a series of fierce attacks at the blue-skinned merfolk. 3 consecutive slashes. Wild heavy strike. The blue-skinned merfolk had been hit by Yin Shui's arrow. Although the frost energy on his right arm had been suppressed, the strength of his right arm was still a bit weaker. Mo Xiao Bai's heavy sword continuously slashed at the iron longbow, producing clanging sounds. The blue-skinned merfolk would retreat with every slash. The wound that had already begun to heal was once again torn open, causing fresh blood to spurt out. Mo Xiao Bai's strength was better than his speed. The blue-skinned merfolk who lacked strength was much stronger. In just a few short clashes, the blue-skinned merfolk's arm was in great pain, and he couldn't stabilize his body. After the wild heavy strike, the blue-skinned merfolk's body staggered. Mo Xiao Bai used the recoil force to step on the ground with his left foot. His right foot turned into a long whip as he heavily swept the blue-skinned merfolk's waist. Bang! Crack, crack, crack. A series of bone-cracking sounds were heard. The blue-skinned merfolk spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew backwards. Mo Xiao Bai instantly chased after him. His face was cold as he raised his sword. Under the terrified eyes of the blue-skinned merfolk, the sword light slashed across the blue-skinned merfolk's neck. Fresh blood spurted out, and the blue-skinned merfolk's corpse fell heavily into the puddle of water. His head was separated from his body. The other two merfolk leaders in the distance saw Mo Shao by kill the blue-skinned merfolk, and their eyes widened. They were being held back by Yin Shui and Mu Forest attacks, and couldn't help at all. They could only let out angry roars. After Mo Shao by killed the blue-skinned merfolk, he turned around and cooperated with Yin Shui and Mu Forest to attack the other two merfolk leaders. Soon, the three of them worked together to kill the other two merfolk leaders. The two merfolk leaders couldn't even escape. When the remaining elite merfolk warriors saw that their leader had died in battle, they immediately began to flee. Mo Xiao Bai and the others effortlessly chased and killed them. Only a small number of merfolk managed to escape into North Blue Lake. After killing an escaping merfolk warrior, Mo Xiao Bai swept his gaze across the camp. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief when he saw that there were no merfolk left standing. He swung his heavy sword to get rid of the blood. At this moment, Mo Xiao Bai paused. He seemed to have forgotten something. He frowned slightly and swept his gaze across the camp. When he saw the corpses of the three merfolk leaders on the ground, his eyes suddenly widened as if he had thought of something. Didn't they find 4 lines of misfortune in that big hut? Why were there only 3 merfolk leaders? Where's the last one? He turned around to look at the camp. There were no more lines of misfortune circulating. What was going on? Mo Xiao Bai's brows furrowed tightly as he looked at the hut. Just now, it seemed like only 3 fishmen leaders had come out. How did the other one escape? Just as Mo Xiao Bai was in a daze, Yin Shui came to his side. She looked at him with her icy blue eyes and asked softly, "What's wrong?" Mo Xiao Bai came to his senses. He looked at Yin Shui and smiled. "Nothing. I just feel like we didn't get as much as we did last time." Yin Shui looked at the corpses on the ground and nodded slightly. Last time, there were 5 merfolk leaders. This time, there were only 3. What a loss. Let's clean up the merfolk corpses. Then we'll go to the hut and see if there are any treasures. They began to clean up the merfolk corpses. They took the heads of the merfolk leaders and the body parts of the elite merfolk warriors. At the same time, they found a storage ring filled with transcendent grade materials in the muscular merfolk leader's hand. After splitting up the items, they came to the hut where the merfolk leaders were. Mo Xiao Bai did not pay attention to the treasures in the hut. Instead, he swept his gaze across the entire hut. He wanted to see if there were any secret exits in the hut. Mu Lin saw Mo Xiao by patting the walls of the hut and stepping on the ground from time to time. He could not help but roll his eyes. "Xiao Bai, aren't you being a bit too lazy?" Mo Xiao Bai froze. He coughed dryly and said, "I'm just looking to see if there are any hidden treasures. How can you say that I'm being lazy?" Hearing Mo Xiao Bai's words, Li Muir's eyes lit up. She looked at Mo Xiao Bai expectantly. "Then, did you find anything?" Mo Xiao Bai said seriously, "Of course not." "Everyone," Mo Xiao Bai smiled and said, "I'll help too." After confirming that there was no back door in the hut, Mo Xiao Bai was even more confused. Why did the remaining merfolk leader suddenly disappear? Mo Xiao Bai's heart ached. More than 10,000 credits were gone just like that. Soon, they cleaned up the transcendent grade materials in the hut and walked out of the hut. Outside the hut, Kong Xiu walked over with a group of Empire citizens. Mo Xiao Bai glanced around and found a middle-aged man with 2 orifices. He did not have any equipment on him. He only had a thin shirt and many wounds. Some of them were still bleeding. He was probably a captive adventurer. "Thank you all for saving us. Otherwise, we would have all died here. Thank you, benefactors. Thank you so much. It's a pity that you didn't come for my son." The Empire citizens who were saved thanked Mo Xiao Bai and the others. Mo Xiao Bai and the others were already used to this. After comforting them, Li Muir healed their wounds and then informed Li Shu to come and pick them up. Chapter 132. This time, after saving the people, Mo Xiao Bai and the others didn't go back directly. Instead, they went to the other islands on the shell map. This time, the fishing boat was filled with vegetables and fruits. Even if there were more people, they could still stay for a few more days. It could be said that they were well prepared. They started searching from the island near the shore. There were 6 islands closest to the shore. The merfolk encampments on the islands weren't very big. There were at most 3 merfolk leaders there, and there were even 1 or 2 of them. There was also an island where the merfolk encampment had been cleaned up, leaving behind corpses. All in all, after 5 islands, Mo Xiaobai had gained more than 300,000 credits. It could be said that he had gained a lot. After that, the fishing boat returned to North Ridge Town and brought back the rescued fishermen. They continued to clean up the merfolk encampments on the islands. On an island 60 kilometers away from the shore of North Green Lake, on one side of the island, there was a merfolk encampment made up of more than 60 huts. Mo Xiaobai's blood-patterned heavy sword was wrapped in bloody light as it slashed the neck of a rank 3, level 5 merfolk leader. Blood gushed out. The merfolk leader's bulging fish eyes were wide open, full of unwillingness. The sword in his hand fell to the ground as his body fell backward. Mo Xiaobai breathed out slightly. His face was covered in sweat. There were many cracks on his golden scale armor, and his body was covered in wounds of various sizes. On the side, Kong Xiu Rant's giant shield had a huge hole. His face was extremely pale. Green light flashed in Li Muer's hand as it poured into Kong Xiu Rant's body. After a while, Kong Xiu Rant's complexion recovered a lot. "Are you okay?" Mo Xiaobai looked at Kong Xiu Ran. Kong Xiu Ran had blocked an attack for him before. Otherwise, his injuries would have been more serious. And Kong Xiu Ran had been seriously injured with just 1 attack. After all, it was a rank 3, level 5 merfolk leader. Its strength was indeed very strong. One must know that even with his golden scale armor and golden scale armor, as well as his Titan strength and life aura, he would still be injured by the merfolk leader's attack, let alone Kong Xiu Ran. Kong Xiu Ran was able to block it because he had an affinity with the earth element. His body was already very strong, and he specialized in the path of body refinement. If it were Li Muir, she would have been dead already. Kong Xiu Ran gave a simple and honest smile and said, "It's no big deal. I'll recover soon." Mo Xiaobai nodded. Seeing that Kong Xiu Rant's injuries had basically recovered, Li Muir heaved a sigh of relief and turned to look at Mo Xiaobai. "Xiaobai, let me treat you." However, when she saw that Mo Xiaobai had recovered from most of his injuries, her eyes widened slightly. "Isn't your recovery a little too fast?" She couldn't help but complain. Mo Xiaobai smiled. "It's all right. Sorry to trouble you." "Yes." The green light in Li Muir's hand flashed and merged into Mo Xiaobai's body. Mo Xiaobai immediately felt a surge of life force slowly flowing through his body. It was a bit like a massage, and at the same time, his recovery speed increased by another level. The force of nature was indeed not bad. Mo Xiaobai sighed. Although he would occasionally enjoy the Natsuki's touch of nature when he was testing the potion, it still felt very good. While Mo Xiaobai was recovering, Yin Shui walked over and looked at Mo Xiaobai without saying a word. Mo Xiaobai was confused by Yin Shui's gaze. "What's wrong?" Meanwhile, Mu Forest had already walked over and opened the cages where the captives were locked up. The captives in the cages were all 2-chakra adventurers, and there was even a 3-chakra adventurer. There was not a single ordinary fisherman. These adventurers had seen Mo Xiaobai and the others kill the rank 3 level 5 Murloc leader. At this moment, they were looking at Mo Xiaobai and the others with strange expressions. Too strong. They were only 2-chakra adventurers, but they were able to kill a rank 3 level 5 Murloc leader. This had completely overturned their worldview. The 3-chakra adventurer was a slightly rough merman with sideburns. He bowed deeply to Mo Xiaobai and the others. "I'm Li Qingyu, the leader of the Black Carp Adventurer Group. Thank you for saving us." The other adventurers behind him also bowed to Mo Xiaobai and the others. Mo Xiaobai just realized that they were all members of the same adventurer group. Mo Xiaobai smiled and waved his hand. "You're welcome. We'll return to North Mountain Town later. I'll bring you back then." Li Qingyu heaved a sigh of relief and smiled excitedly. "Thank you so much. You guys can rest here first. Let Muir heal you." Mo Xiaobai smiled and signaled to Li Mu Air and Kong Xiuran, who had recovered, to look after these adventurers. Although Li Qingyu was a three-chakra of a martial fundamentalist, she was still an ordinary one. She was definitely no match for Kong Xiuran and Li Mu Air. Mo Xiaobai wasn't worried. The three of them walked into the hut. On the stone table in the hut, Mo Xiaobai and the others saw a white shell on the table. Mo Xiaobai walked over and picked up the white shell. He looked at it and said softly, "This is the fourth one." Mu Forest looked at the shell and didn't pay any more attention to it. He smiled and said, "Let's study it when we get back." The few of them first packed up the transcendent materials and informed Uncle Li to bring the fishing boat over. The fishing boat left the island and moved towards North Mountain Town. Li Shu asked the crew to bring the Black Carp Adventure Group to rest. He then turned to Mo Xiaobai and smiled. "Xiaobai, we found all the locations on the map. Are we still going to come out this time?" Mo Xiaobai smiled. "I'm not sure yet. We found 3 more shell maps this time. We'll study them when we get back." Hearing this, Uncle Li nodded slightly. He then looked at the bloodstains on the ground and said, "You guys should go and rest too." Mo Xiaobai nodded and was about to say something when he noticed a grayish-black line of misfortune circling around the island. It seemed to be the direction of the mermen's camp. Mo Xiaobai was stunned and a little puzzled. He didn't notice this line of misfortune before. Why did it appear now? Did the leader of the mermen just come back? "What's wrong?" Yin Shui asked softly when she saw Mo Xiaobai's stunned expression. Her ice blue eyes followed Mo Xiaobai's gaze and looked towards the island. Yin Shui came back to her senses and shook her head. "Nothing." The leader of the mermen saw that the camp had been cleared. If they went back now, they would probably run away. "Forget it. Let's go and rest." As Mo Xiaobai spoke, he walked into the cabin. On the island, at the mermen's camp, a hooded man in a black robe looked at the mermen's corpses on the ground. He raised his head and looked at the fishing boat that was gradually disappearing into the distance. His black eyes flashed with anger under his hood. "Damn it, it's them again. The mermen's camp in this area has been cleared. If this goes on, we won't be able to complete the mission." Speaking of this, he thought of the consequences of not completing the mission. His body trembled, and a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. He looked at the mermen's corpses and said with disgust, "They're all trash." Saying this, he stepped into North Green Lake and left in a certain direction. "I have to report this to the deacon." Night fell, and silver light fell on North Green Lake. The fishing boat slowly entered the dock. After reaching the shore, Mo Xiaobai and the others exhaled and revealed a trace of smile. They had been fighting on North Green Lake for the past few days, so they were quite tense and tired. After returning to North Ridge Town, they naturally relaxed. On the pier, Lu Qing and the others who had been waiting for a long time saw Mo Xiaobai and the others return and immediately welcomed them with a smile. "Xiaobai, you're back." "Big brother Lu Qing, did you book a hotel? You don't trust me?" Lu Qing patted his chest with a smile and grinned. Du Ling saw the cracks on Mo Xiaobai's armor and couldn't help but ask, "It was quite dangerous this time, right?" Mo Xiaobai saw Du Ling's expression and scratched his head. He smiled and said, "It was okay, it wasn't too dangerous." Lemur looked at Du Ling and then at Mo Xiaobai. She smiled and reached out to touch Mo Xiaobai. Mo Xiaobai saw her expression and couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Let's go to the Adventurers Guild first," Yin Shui said softly. She then walked out of the dock. Mo Xiaobai and the others followed to register for the rescue mission. Although it was already nighttime, the Adventurers Guild was still busy. The staff in charge of registration already recognized Mo Xiaobai and the others. After all, they had been here a few times. Moreover, they were only at the second aperture, which left a deep impression on the staff. The registration went smoothly because they rescued a member of the Adventurers Guild. Li Qingyu was even at the third aperture. The mission reward was quite generous. There were 20,000 origin crystals and 30 points. After the registration, the Qingyu Adventurers Guild bade them farewell. Their home wasn't in North Ridge Town, but 7 Stars Town near North Ridge Town. They planned to go back that night. After all, They had been held captive for a few days. If they didn't go back, their families would be worried. Mo Xiaobai and the others had a meal with Lu Qing and the others. Then, they went to the hotel that Lu Qing had booked. In the hotel room, Mo Xiaobai took out the 4 seashell maps that he had obtained previously. One of them was the earliest one. The other 3 were obtained from the merman's encampment. The first 2 maps were no different from the first one. The biggest difference was that there were more black areas than the first one. The positions of the red dots were the same. The last piece, which was today's piece, after Mo Xiaobai took it out, the few of them looked at the contents and their eyes widened. There's something different, Lemur cried out in surprise. This map was much bigger than the previous 3 maps. Mo Xiaobai took out the previous 3 maps and compared them with this one. He discovered that this new map included the nearby area and the deeper parts of North Qing Lake. Of course, there were also red dots on the map. Mo Xiaobai compared the map and found that the island that they had obtained this map from was only in the middle of the red dots on the new seashell map. According to the scale, the red dot in the deepest part of the new map was almost 200 kilometers away from North Qing Lake's inner shore. Mo Xiaobai and the others looked at each other. Wood Forest said solemnly, 200 kilometers away from the shore. The mermen, there should be very strong, right? Mo Xiaobai frowned. The mermen on the last island were already very dangerous for us. If we go deeper, I'm afraid we won't be able to guarantee our own safety. Then what should we do? It wasn't easy to find the other merman encampments. Are we just going to leave them be? Ji Feibai shouted. We've already obtained so many credits from the first few encampments. If we can clear the merman encampments at the back, we'll definitely get more credits, right? Mo Xiaobai was also in a dilemma. One had to know that after the previous encampment was cleaned up, he roughly calculated that he had obtained a little over 1 million credits. More than 1 million credits. If they were in the Blade Peak Mountains, they would have to save up for a few months. What do you think? Yin Shui turned to look at Mo Xiaobai. Wood Forest and the others were the same. Hearing this, Mo Xiaobai looked at the red dot on the shell. After thinking for a bit, he still wasn't willing to give up. These credits were too tempting. He said, how about this? We slowly push forward. When we encounter a merman encampment that we can't deal with, we'll give up. Under normal circumstances, Mo Xiaobai definitely wouldn't want to take this risk. However, he had the white light. As long as he looked at the concentration of the lines of misfortune and good luck, he would be able to predict the degree of danger in advance. At that time, if the line of misfortune was especially dark, then he would choose to give up. Wood Forest and the others had already seen Mo Xiaobai's premonition and good luck. Hearing Mo Xiaobai say this, they nodded and didn't object. To be honest, they also didn't want to give up. It had to be known that they had obtained more than 100,000 credits from a merman encampment at the 3rd level. The deeper they went, the more credits there would be. Then it's decided. Let's have a good rest tonight, and then tomorrow we'll go repair our equipment, buy some medicine and runes before we set off. Mo Xiaobai said, okay. The others nodded and then went back to their rooms to rest. Red Orchid City, Red Orchid Hotel's top suite. Suyin had long red hair that looked like flames. Wearing a red dress, she leaned on the sofa. Her breasts were almost bursting out of the dress. She hummed an unknown song and looked at the white shell in her hand. At this moment, the bathroom door opened. Natsuki walked out of the bathroom in a light white nightgown. Her beautiful green hair was still a bit wet, and her elegant and beautiful face had a bit of redness after a bath. Suyin raised her head and looked at the beautiful Natsuki. Her beautiful face revealed a somewhat wretched smile. Hee, tong tong, you're done. Is there any water in the bathtub? I'm going to take a bath too. She jumped up from the sofa and strode toward the bathroom. Natsuki blinked and said, I've already flushed the water in the bathtub. You can turn on the water again. Hearing Natsuki's words, Su Yin's body stiffened. Her face fell, and she was in disbelief. You've already flushed your bath water? Natsuki blinked and looked at Su Yin with some confusion. What's wrong? No, nothing. I just feel that it's not good to waste water. One bathtub can be used by 2 people. Natsuki heard and was a little embarrassed. That's not good. It's better to take separate baths. Hurry up and take a bath. Natsuki sat on the sofa and picked up the white shell that Su-in put on the coffee table. Su-in, on the other hand, dragged her body into the bathroom with a look of despair. Chapter 133. Soon, Su-in finished showering. She walked out of the bathroom and sat down on the sofa. She leaned on Xiaodong's shoulder and took a deep breath. "Tong Tong, you smell so good," she giggled. Natsuki pushed her gently. "Stop messing around. Look at this map. There's only one red dot left." Su-in looked at the shell map and became serious. "We have already met the leader of the Murlocs. The last red dot might be the lord of the Murlocs. We might be able to find the reason for the Murlocs' rebellion." Mu Xiaodong gently nodded. "Yes. Judging from the situation of the previous merfolk camps, the merfolk on the last island shouldn't be weak. Let's conserve our energy. There should be a fierce battle ahead." Su-yin's eyes flashed coldly. "I'm afraid it won't be just us. Many of our old rivals will go there as well." Natsuki flipped her hair and chuckled. "We'll have to rely on our own abilities then." 2 days later, the sun rose and the morning light shone on Beiqing Lake. The torrential rain from 2 days ago had already dissipated. The sky was blue and the lake was calm, reflecting the blue sky. The fishing boats sailed on the lake towards the island Emo Xiaobai and the others had chosen. On the deck, Emo Xiaobai and the others leaned against the railing and enjoyed the morning breeze. At this moment, an island appeared in the distance. Mu Sunlin smiled and said, "This is the island, right?" Emo Xiaobai looked in the direction of the island. In the clear air, there were gray and light red lines flowing out from the island. He nodded. "It should be here. Let's get ready." "Okay." As the fishing boat got closer, the color of the lines of misfortune became darker. Emo Xiaobai frowned. This color was a bit scary. The lines of misfortune were almost completely black. However, Emo Xiaobai looked at the island that was even bigger than before. His eyes flashed. There should be some room for maneuvering. Soon, the fishing boat was 1 kilometer away from the island. Emo Xiaobai turned to the cabin and shouted, "Li Shu, let's stop here. We'll go there ourselves." Hearing Emo Xiaobai's shouts, the fishing boat slowly came to a stop. Emo Xiaobai called out to Ji Fei Bai again. Then, he boarded the small wooden boat and headed towards the island. The closer they got to the island, the darker the lines of misfortune and good luck in Emo Xiaobai's eyes became. Not long after, the small wooden boat reached the shore. After setting down the small wooden boat, Emo Xiaobai and the others stepped onto the sand. Emo Xiaobai looked at the gray lines of misfortune in the distance and raised his eyebrows slightly. "I feel that this place is very dangerous. Let's be careful." Hearing Emo Xiaobai's words, the originally calm Yin Shui pursed her red lips. Her icy blue eyes became even sharper. Mu Forest's face was also tense. His expression was serious. "Let's go take a look first. If it's really too dangerous, we'll give up." Li Mu'er and Kong Xiu Ran both nodded with serious expressions. They were the weakest. If there was really danger, Emo Xiaobai and the others might not be able to take care of them. There were 3 or 4 small mountains on the island. Forest covered the mountains. The forest was filled with the sounds of birds chirping and beasts roaring. Compared to the island they saw before, this place was much bigger. There was a beach at the edge of the island. Emo Xiaobai and the others walked along the beach and circled the island from the right. After circling about half of the island, they saw a merfolk encampment built on the beach. There were almost 100 huts, and many merfolk were going in and out of the huts. There were also some merfolk coming and going from North Blue Lake. There was a huge hut built on the shallow surface of Northern Green Lake. Emo Xiaobai saw 6 lines of misfortune inside, and they were all grayish-black in color. Their strength was probably not any weaker than the Class 3, Level 5 Murloc leader he encountered last time. Looking at the encampment in the distance, Mu Forest said, "Should we go directly?" When Emo Xiaobai heard this, he glanced at Mu Forest and then revealed a kind smile. "Forest, your wind-type origin skill isn't slow, is it?" When Mu Forest heard this, he was stunned. Then, he smiled slightly and said somewhat proudly, "Of course. My Windwalk is a rarely seen wind-type origin skill. I don't want to boast, but my speed should be a bit faster than yours. When Emo Xiaobai heard this, his smile became even more radiant. Is that so? As expected of you, Forest. You're really powerful. Mu Forest laughed softly and put his hands behind his back. He raised his head and puffed out his chest. It's just SOSO. That's good. Why don't you go and lure some of the merfolk over? The merfolk encampment we found last time already had such a powerful leader. This one probably won't be weak either. If all of the merfolk leaders are gathered together, we probably won't be able to defeat them. Mu Forest's smile froze. He looked at Emo Xiaobai with some disbelief. His expression seemed to say, I thought you were praising me. So this is what you're planning. To the side, Yin Shue's lips curled up slightly. She said softly, I agree. Li Muir and Kong Xiaoran glanced at each other. They didn't say anything, but their eyes betrayed them. Obviously, they also felt that this was a good idea. Mu Forest's lips twitched. He glanced resentfully at Emo Xiaobai and Yin Shui. Then, he looked at the encampment in the distance. After a moment of silence, he said, Forget it. I'll go then. He looked at Emo Xiaobai and Yin Shui worriedly. You guys have to wait in the distance. Don't just run away. Emo Xiaobai rolled his eyes. Don't worry. Are we that kind of people? Mu Forest seemed to feel that this method was indeed more effective. He nodded and agreed. Then, the few of them discussed the details. Emo Xiaobai, Yin Shui, Li Muir, and Kong Xiao ran hid in a small forest in the distance. Mu Forest took a deep breath. He turned around and walked towards the merfolk encampment. Looking at his back, there was a tragic feeling of a warrior leaving and never coming back. In a merfolk encampment, the merfolk were busy. At the edge of the encampment, there were 2 teams of elite merfolk warriors patrolling. These merfolk warriors were all elites at the beginning of the 3rd rank. At this moment, a sharp wind blade slashed through the air. Before the merfolk warriors could react, it had already chopped off the head of one of them. Blood spurted out, and the Murloc warriors in the same team were all stunned. Some of them were dumbfounded, and their eyes bulged out. At this moment, wind blades whistled through the air and killed the remaining merfolk warriors in an instant. The other team of merfolk warriors saw this and immediately roared. It attracted the attention of the merfolk in the encampment. On the beach, dozens of meters away from the fisherman's encampment, a handsome and elegant young elf wearing a gorgeous green robe stood there. A gentle breeze flowed around him, blowing his long green hair. Mu Forest waved the staff in his hand. Wind blades shot out. Each wind blade brought with it a spray of blood and took away the life of a merfolk. At this moment, the encampment fell into chaos. Mu Forest was at the 8th level of 2 apertures. He was very strong. At this moment, the door to the hut opened. 2 extremely tall merfolk walked out. One of them held a battle axe, while the other held a battle blade. Both of them were wearing battle armor. The leader of the merfolk who had just come out opened his eyes wide in anger after seeing the dead merfolk warriors in the encampment. They turned their heads to look at the culprit on the beach far away. Damned elves! The battle axe-wielding leader's jet-black eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. After roaring, he bent his legs slightly. His leg muscles swelled, and he stomped hard on the sand. Boom! Immediately, 2 deep pits appeared in the sand. The leader of the merfolk rushed into the air and jumped dozens of meters. He held the battle axe with both hands and descended from the sky, chopping down at Mu Forest. Die! The leader of the merfolk roared. His entire body was enveloped by a pale white origin power, and his aura surged. Rare rank origin skill, Leap Slash. Sensing the powerful aura descending from the sky, the elegant smile on Mu Forest's face suddenly froze. His face couldn't help but tremble. A pale green light flickered on his body, and he instantly retreated. The moment Mu Forest retreated, the leader of the merfolk had already arrived at Mu Forest's previous location. The battle axe slammed heavily into the sand. Yellow sand flew everywhere, and a deep axe mark appeared on the sand. Seeing this terrifying attack, Mu Forest's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Wasn't this job a little too dangerous? Although he was complaining in his heart, He waved the staff in his right hand. A wind blade cut through the air and slashed at the leader of the merfolk. The leader of the merfolk didn't even look. He casually waved his axe and scattered the wind blade. Then, he ran toward Moo Forest. At this moment, another black shadow flashed in the distance and charged toward Moo Forest. He glanced out of the corner of his eye and discovered that it was another merfolk leader. The two merfolk leaders surrounded him at the same time. Moo Forest felt an immense pressure in his heart. He retreated and ran toward the small forest where Mo Xiao Bai and the others were hiding. Mo Xiao Bai and the others, who were hiding in the small forest, saw Moo Forest run over with the two merfolk leaders. A glint flashed through their eyes. They're coming, they're coming. Get ready. A fierce look flashed through Mo Xiao Bai's eyes. He immediately drank a bottle of giant strength potion and a bottle of iron skin potion. Violent energy surged through his body. To avoid any more trouble, they had to kill these two merfolk leaders as soon as possible. Yin Shui, Li Muir, and Kong Xiu Ran also drank the potions. Very soon, Mu Sanlin rushed into the small forest with a murloc leader who was still roaring behind him. After entering the small forest, the two merfolk leaders did not notice anything strange. At this moment, a sword flashed, and Mo Xiao Bai appeared beside the merfolk leader who was holding the battle axe. 3 white sword flashes and a red sword flashed through the air. The scales on the merfolk leader who was holding the battle axe exploded. He let out a low roar and turned around to wave his battle axe at the sword flashes. A clanging sound was heard. The powerful force made the merfolk leader who was caught off guard. He staggered and uncontrollably stepped back. While the merfolk leader was stepping back, a few frost arrows pierced through the air from another direction and shot toward the merfolk leader. Seeing this scene, the face of the murloc leader who was eating the axe changed dramatically. It roared loudly, and the knife-wielding murloc leader not far away immediately planned to turn back and help the axe-wielding murloc leader block the attack. Just as he was about to turn back, an eagle's cry was heard. A giant green eagle that was condensed by a storm quickly rushed toward the merfolk leader who was holding the sword. Feeling the powerful aura, the merfolk leader who was holding the sword could only turn back and block the attack. Seeing this, the merfolk leader who was holding the axe could only twist his body and dodge the attack. Chi. Frost arrows shot at the fishman leader's body. Some hit its armor, and some hit its exposed skin, penetrating its arms, waist, and abdomen. Although the merfolk leader who was holding the axe managed to twist his body and dodge the fatal attack. However, the frost power spread from the wound. Suddenly, the merfolk leader who was holding the axe slowly stiffened. Roar! He opened his eyes wide and roared. His whole body was burning with a light red aura. That was the boiling of his blood. As his chi and blood boiled, the frost power was dispelled. While the murloc leader stiffened, Mo Xiao Bai had once again transformed into a blade beam and appeared behind the murloc leader. With a flash of his sword, a violent energy surged and slashed at the murloc leader's neck. Chi! Blood spurted out. The merfolk leader's head fell to the ground. Then, his body fell heavily to the ground. In his bulging fish eyes, the unwilling light slowly dissipated. Seeing this scene, the sword-wielding murloc leader who had just blocked Eaglestorm's attack widened its eyes and let out a furious roar. As he roared, frost arrows were shot at him. He had to hastily block them again. Mo Xiao Bai didn't spare a glance at the corpse on the ground. Instead, he turned around and charged at the murloc leader. Not long after, under Mo Xiao Bai, Yin Shui, and Mu Senlin's explosive power after taking potions, a frost arrow pierced through the neck of the leader of the murlocs. His life force dissipated, and his corpse fell to the ground. Mo Xiao Bai rubbed his sore hands. Looking at the 2 corpses on the ground, he let out a sigh of relief. Mu Forest's eyes were filled with joy. It's easier than I thought. Yin Shui walked over and nodded her head gently. Her red lips curled up slightly, and there was a smile on her face. Mo Xiao Bai chuckled. After all, we were unprepared. We even took drugs. If we can't beat them, then we can only run. Mu Forest smiled. Let's rest for a while. Then we'll change to another place and continue. Mo Xiaobai was silent for a while. Then he said, "But I'll go this time." Mu Forest was stunned. He frowned. "Why? Are you worried that I'll be caught?" Mo Xiaobai smiled and shook his head. "After all, you just attracted a wave of merfolk. If you go back and the two merfolk leaders don't come back, it'll be too strange. Although merfolk aren't smart and their brains might not be able to understand the situation, it's still better to be safe." Mu Forest heard this and showed a look of realization. "That makes sense. Then we'll do as you say." At this time, Yin Shui said softly, "Then I'll go." Mo Xiaobai was stunned. He looked at Yin Shui. "You'll go?" Mo Xiaobai had the idea of men first. He didn't want Yin Shui to go. In the past, his speed was definitely not as fast as Yin Shui. But now he had blade edge walk. Compared to Yin Shui, the difference would be very small. Yin Shui looked at Mo Xiaobai's eyes. Her icy blue eyes didn't back down. "Your explosive power is the strongest among us. Plus, you can fight the merfolk leaders head-on. If there's an accident, you can handle it." Mo Xiaobai heard Yin Shui's words. He was silent for a while. Then he nodded. "Then you be careful." Yin Shui nodded. Then they changed directions. Yin Shui went out and soon came back with two merfolk leaders. With their previous experience, Mo Xiaobai and the others killed the two merfolk leaders even faster than last time. Things couldn't get any smoother. It had to be said that the merfolk's brains weren't very good. There are only two merfolk leaders left in the encampment that were a threat to them. They directly charged at them. After a battle, they killed most of the merfolk, including the two merfolk leaders. The remaining 2 or 3 saw that the situation wasn't good and sneaked away. Mo Xiaobai and the others couldn't chase after them. Then, they cleaned up the corpses and found some transcendent materials. Perhaps because they were deep in northern Green Lake, the transcendent materials in this encampment were much more abundant than before. Mo Xiaobai did a rough calculation. Just from this encampment, he had received more than 200,000 credits. Yin Shui and Mu Forest naturally received about the same amount. Although Li Muir and Kong Xiu Ran received less, they still received more credits than before. Naturally, they were looking forward to the other encampments. If this continues, we'll make a lot of money if we clear 3 or 4 more. Even Mu Forest's voice was tinged with excitement. Even if he was filthy rich, millions of credits was still not a small number to him. It was mainly earned by himself, so he felt a sense of accomplishment when he used it. But why aren't there any captives here? Lemur looked at the encampment suspiciously. They had searched the entire encampment, but didn't find any captives. Who knows? Maybe this encampment is of a higher level? Kong Xiu Ren said softly. They didn't think too much about it. Let's go to the next encampment. Then, they returned to the fishing boat and set off for the next encampment. Half a day later, Mo Xiaobai and the others approached the next red dot on the shell. Mo Xiaobai looked at the island in the distance and frowned. He discovered that there were no lines of bad luck or good luck on the island in the distance. There was only white light flowing there. Chapter 134. What was going on? Mo Xiaobai was startled. Had they come to the wrong place? Mo Xiaobai looked down at the shell map and confirmed it with Li Shu. After confirming that they had come to the right place, he was dumbfounded. Where had the line of good luck and bad luck gone? What's wrong? Yin Shui looked at Mo Xiaobai. Mo Xiaobai came to and shook his head as he gazed at the island in the distance. Nothing. Let's get on the island. Let's see what happens after we get on the island. A few of them nodded. Just like before, they boarded the small wooden boat onto the island. This island was slightly smaller than the previous one, and it was also quite barren. Mo Xiaobai's group moved carefully and soon found the merfolk encampment. However, Mo Xiaobai's group opened their eyes wide in surprise after seeing the scene inside the encampment. That was because many of the huts in the encampment had been destroyed and were still burning. The ground was covered in dried merfolk corpses. No one knew when they had died. Mu Forest frowned. Someone beat us to it. Let's go take a look. The group quickly ran toward the merfolk encampment. After entering the encampment, Mo Xiaobai's group searched around and found that there were no longer any merfolk warriors alive. Even the transcendent materials in the huts had been taken away. The group was somewhat disappointed. Let's go to the other islands. With that, the group boarded the small wooden boat and returned to the fishing boat. They then moved toward the other merfolk encampments. North Blue Lake, about 200 kilometers away from the shore. A Black Origin mechanical ship was docked on the shore of a giant island dozens of kilometers in radius. Sounds of battle could be heard from ashore. Several dozen elite merfolk warriors with 4 or 5 apertures were attacking Su-In and Natsuki. Su-In swept the long spear in her hand, and the 2 5 apertures elite Murloc warriors were sent flying more than 10 meters away. Their bones and tendons were broken, and blood spurted out. When they fell to the ground, they had already lost their vitality. Natsuki waved his hand, and vines with sharp thorns grew out from the hard stone ground, binding the Murlocs tightly. The thorns pierced into the Murlocs' bodies, and soon their vitality dissipated. At the same time, 2 wooden golems stood guard beside Natsuki. With a wave of their hands, the Murloc warriors were sent flying one after another. Blood spurted out from the air. Not long after, the number of Murloc warriors dwindled. The remaining Murloc warriors roared at Mu Xiaodong and Su-In a few times before slipping away. Su-In stabbed a slow Murloc warrior to death with her spear. She glanced at the Murloc that had already run into the forest and couldn't help but twitch her mouth. That's it? Didn't they run too fast? Natsuki flipped her emerald green hair and glanced at the forest. He said with a smile, "Don't worry about that. There are many ships docking in the other directions. There should be a lot of people coming this time. We have to hurry. Let's find where the Murloc's nest is." Okay. Su-In nodded. She then looked at the lush forest not far away and couldn't help but frown. The trees on this island are lush. Natsuki's emerald green eyes were also somewhat surprised. Indeed, the nature power here is denser than the other islands. It's even close to the level of Emerald Island. Hearing this, Su-In blinked in surprise. It's that dense? There can't be nature spirits here, right? Natsuki shook her head slightly. I've already sensed it. There shouldn't be any. It's just pure nature power. I don't know why. Su-In nodded and didn't think too much about it. She waved the spear in her hand and grinned. Forget it. Let's go in and find where the Murloc's nest is. Okay. In a humid cave. A tall Murloc that was 3 meters tall and covered in pure white scales was sitting on a stone chair. In his right hand was a huge black trident, and on his huge head was a crown of thorns covered with moss. At this moment, this tall Murloc was looking at a Murloc commander who was kneeling below the stone chair. This Murloc held a spear and spoke in an incomprehensible language. "My king, the Empire's elites have arrived on this island." Hearing this, the white Murloc paused. His protruding golden eyes flashed with a mysterious black light. "How many of them are there?" 53. They're all 5 or 6 chakra elites. They're looking for the entrance now. I see. Get ready. We'll kill them all here and avenge our comrades. Then we'll leave the nest. The Murloc commander lowered his head. "Yes, my king." After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth. "What about the Oracle and the others?" The Murloc king was silent for a moment. The Oracle's identity is sensitive, so he left first. However, he promised that he wouldn't go back on his word. Hearing this, the Murloc commander nodded slightly. "Then I'll take my leave. I'll go prepare now." Okay. Then he got up and left in a hurry. In the spacious cavern, only the tall white Murloc was left sitting on the stone chair in silence. At this moment, the Murloc king's face suddenly twisted. He seemed to be struggling. Strange black mist swirled in his golden eyes. Strange chains appeared all over his body. "Damn it!" the Murloc king roared in a low voice. However, the black chains only appeared for a moment before they disappeared into the Murloc king's body. His face returned to normal. The fishing boat sailed on the lake. Mo Xiaobai and the others searched for the Murloc bases on the shell map one by one. However, to Mo Xiaobai and the others' disappointment, there were no Murloc in any of the bases. Some bases had been destroyed and were filled with Murloc corpses. Most bases did not even have a trace of a Murloc. They searched the entire base, but did not find a single fish scale. However, they did find some transcendent materials in the huts. It was a consolation. The sky darkened. The stars and moon shone brightly on the black screen. Mo Xiao Bai and the others sat in the cabin, frowning slightly. They were silent. Speaking of which, where did all the Murloc go? Did they all run away when they realized that the cleansing had begun? The few of them looked at each other. After a moment of silence, Ji Feibai revealed a somewhat worried expression. We are now almost 200 kilometers away from the shore of the lake. In such a deep region, the strength of the fishmen should be very strong, right? Should we continue to go deeper? Li Mu'er and Kong Xiu Ran also showed worried expressions. Mu Forest turned to Mo Xiaobai and asked, Xiaobai, what do you think? Mo Xiaobai frowned and thought for a moment. He did not know why, but he did not find any dark lines of misfortune in this area of the lake. Naturally, there was no danger. However, this kind of place did not give people a sense of security. He was actually a little worried. Mo Xiaobai looked down at the map and said, we are very close to the red dot in the deepest part of the lake. Tomorrow, we will go to the red dot and take a look. If we can't find it, we will go back. The harvest this time could be considered to be sufficient. There were about 1.3 million credits. It was enough for them to cultivate for a while. There was no need to take too many risks. Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Yin Shui and the others nodded lightly. In the deep night, on the island jungle in the deepest part of the shell map, Suyin and Natsuki were sitting in front of a bonfire in an open space, surrounded by Natsuki's poisonous vines. There were a few Akatsuki Academy students beside the two of them. A few of them looked a little haggard. There were many cracks on their equipment and bloodstains. However, the wounds on their bodies had already healed. A handsome and tall rabbit man looked at Natsuki gratefully. His gray-blue eyes flashed with infatuation. Junior Xiaotong, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you, we would have been in danger. Natsuki shook his head slightly and smiled gently. Senior, you're welcome. Junior Xiaotong. The rabbit man opened his mouth and was about to say something. Su-Yin raised her eyebrows and glared at the rabbit man. Senior Lu, don't call her so intimately. Please call her Junior Mu. Tong Tong isn't close to you. The rabbit man's smile froze. He looked embarrassed. He didn't dare to refute Su-Yin's scolding even though he had opened 6 orifices. Although Su-Yin and Natsuki had only opened 5 orifices, they were much stronger than the seniors who had opened 6 orifices. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to save them from the Murloc commander and force it to retreat. At this moment, a beautiful elf girl said, I didn't expect the Murlocs to set up so many ambushes. We were too careless. Speaking of this, there was fear in her eyes. If it wasn't for Junior Mu and Junior Su, we wouldn't have been able to return to school. Yeah, but we don't know where that commander went. We searched for so long, but couldn't find their nest. Isn't their nest on the island? Hearing this, Natsuki and Su-Yin frowned. After a moment of silence, Natsuki said softly, Seniors, have a good rest. We'll continue searching tomorrow. I'll have the wooden guards keep watch. Sorry to trouble you, Junior Mu. Hearing this, everyone closed their eyes and rested. In the dark forest, there were sounds of battle and screams from time to time. The Murlocs that were lying in ambush were fighting with the Empire's experts. There were students from the Academy, adventurers, Empire's guards, and Azure Edge's experts. The sounds of battle didn't stop for the entire night. On northern Green Lake, a pitch-black wooden boat slowly moved toward the shore. On the deck, 4 figures in black robes and hoods stood there. The night wind blew, and their black robes fluttered. One of the black-robed figures said, Deacon, if we leave like this, what if the master blames us? The leader chuckled and said in a low and hoarse voice, We've searched the entire lake region, but we still couldn't find the location on the ancient ruins. We need to find another way. Also, these Murlocs are too big and have attracted the attention of the higher-ups. If we stay here, it won't be good for our school. Don't worry, I've already asked the master. This is the will of our God. Hearing this, the other 3 let out a sigh of relief. The leader used the starlight to look at the distant darkness. That was the direction of the Murlocs Island. The eyes under his hood flickered slowly, and a cold expression appeared. But the gifts prepared for those who come to the island will surely give them a pleasant surprise. When a black-robed person heard this, a gentle female voice sounded. Deacon, do we really not need to send people to guard the shadow altar? The black deacon shook his head slightly and chuckled. Don't worry, the altar is in the shadow enchantment. It is protected by a strand of my God's divine power, so it won't be found. Once the people on the island die, the altar will self-destruct, leaving nothing behind. Deacon is wise. Our God is eternal, and the shadow is always there. The deacon chuckled. All right, let's think about how we're going to find those ruins. Those ruins have been passed down since ancient times. Even though the environment has changed over time, it should still be in North Ching Lake. Yes, the three black-robed men nodded. The night wind blew, and the black boat slowly disappeared into the night. The next day, the sun rose and shone on northern Green Lake. Natsuki, Su-in, and the other 6th grade students opened their eyes. Even as she rested, Mu Xiaodong waved her staff, and the vines covering the area slowly retracted. Su-in said, Okay, let's continue to look for the murloc's nest. At least we have to find it before the others. They continued to search in the forest. At noon, the weather was good and the sun was high in the sky. However, in the depths of the dense forest on the island, it was a bit dark. Xiaodong Mu, Su-in, and the others looked vigilant as they focused on their surroundings. In the morning, they encountered a few more murlocs, and even 2 murloc commanders. However, because Su-in, Natsuki, and the other 6th grade student from Akatsuki were quite strong, nothing much happened. At this moment, rustling sounds could be heard in the distance. Everyone turned to look at the direction of the sound. Su-in held her spear and blocked Natsuki behind her. Vines slowly appeared under Natsuki's feet. At this moment, a group of people walked out from the depths of the forest. The leader was a beautiful mermaid with a hot body and wearing the Azure Edge uniform. Behind her were a few powerful people from Azure Edge and a few who seemed to be adventurers. The two sides looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that the other party wasn't a murloc. Then they discussed for a while. Because of the harsh environment and the fact that they still hadn't found the murloc's nest, the two groups decided to work together. In the afternoon, Natsuki, Su-in, and the others met other powerful people who entered the island. Some of them were in a bad state, and some even died from the murloc's attacks. Under the guidance of the mermaid from Azure Edge, they worked together and continued to search for the murloc's nest. When the sky began to turn golden, a group of 20 or so people stood at the edge of a cliff on one side of the island. Below the cliff was the calm North Blue Lake. The leader of the Azure Edge's mermaid team looked at a member of the Azure Edge who was holding a longbow and frowned. Are you sure that the murloc's nest is below? The Azure Edge member was a night creature youth. When he heard this, he laughed bitterly. I can only sense that there are many creatures gathered below. Elder sister, you know my origin skill. I can't be sure if it's a murloc or not. The mermaid raised her eyebrows slightly. 2 blue daggers appeared in her hands. I'll go down and take a look. As she spoke, she had already jumped off the cliff and into the lake. The others didn't even have time to react. Chapter 135. Ha! Our big sister is always like this. Let's wait for a while. The young man from Night Creature laughed dryly when he saw Su-in, Natsuki, and the other strong people widen their eyes. Su-in and Natsuki looked at each other and nodded lightly with the rest. Not long after, a head popped out from the lake. It was the leader of the Azure Blade. She waved at the people above and said, Come down, there's a hole below. When the people above heard this, they looked at each other and all jumped into the lake. The leader of the Azure Blade led everyone into the lake and entered a deep hole in the cliff. After passing through a winding tunnel, everyone floated up and came out of the water. There was an empty space not far from the water. There were 2 elite Murloc warriors' corpses on the empty space. It was obvious that they were killed by the leader of the Azure Blade. Everyone came out of the water. Natsuki and Yin Shui looked around. The hole was very deep. There were some glowing pearls on the walls, so it wasn't dark. The leader of the Azure Blade glanced at everyone and said slowly, "This should be the Murloc's nest." Everyone has the same goal this time. Judging from the situation on the island, the nest is very dangerous. I hope everyone can work together to destroy this nest. No problem. Since Captain Lu said so, we'll follow. We're fine with it too. It'll be more convenient for everyone to work together. Everyone agreed. They were scared of being ambushed on the island. The Murloc on this island was obviously not normal. Natsu Ki and Su-in looked at each other and nodded lightly. Seeing that everyone agreed, Captain Lu smiled and nodded in satisfaction. Then everyone go in. Be careful. The fishing boat floated on the lake for a long time. Mo Xiao Bai and the rest looked into the distance from the deck. There's only one red dot left. I wonder if there are any Murloc on that island? Sigh. I wonder where the Murloc on the other islands went. Lemur felt the pinch. The Murlocs on every island were credits. Move Forest chuckled and said, "If we really encounter those mermen, we might not even be able to defeat them." That's true. Lemur showed a look of realization. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that Miss Lee was a high-level body fundamentalist with at least 7 apertures opened. Ji Feibai rolled his eyes and couldn't help but ridicule. Kong Xiao Ren also revealed a smile. Yin Shui turned to look at Mo Xiao Bai and then looked at the shell map in his hand. She asked softly, "How much further?" Mo Xiao Bai looked at the map and then looked at the location. "We should be there soon." At this moment, a black dot appeared on the surface of the lake in the distance. As the fishing boat approached, the black dot grew larger and larger. Mo Xiao Bai's eyes lit up. "We're here." Hearing Mo Xiao Bai's words, Kong Xiao ran and the others stopped chatting and turned to look in the direction of the island. "That's the last island? This island is quite big. It's much bigger than the ones we encountered before." Move Forest raised his eyebrows slightly and was a little surprised. Mo Xiao Bai nodded slightly and looked at the white light in the distance. When they got closer, the edge of the white light should change. If it didn't change, it meant that there weren't any mermen on the last island. As they got closer and closer to the island, Mo Xiao Bai and the others increasingly felt the size of the island. It had a radius of tens of kilometers and was completely different from the previous islands. When they were about 1 kilometer away from the island, the fishing boat stopped as usual. Mo Xiao Bai and the others got on the small wooden boat and started moving toward the island. Because the island was too big, Mo Xiao Bai's white light covered less than 1 kilometer. Naturally, it couldn't cover the entire island. However, as they got closer and closer to the island, Mo Xiao Bai felt a lot of lines of misfortune from the forest on the island. Mo Xiao Bai was overjoyed. Were there mermen here? Soon, the small wooden boat approached a beach. At this moment, the few of them opened their eyes wide and looked at a metal mechanical boat on the beach in surprise. "There's someone else here? There doesn't seem to be anyone on the boat." Move Forest frowned slightly and said. Mo Xiao Bai glanced and saw that the boat was full of white light. Even if there were people on the boat, they wouldn't be a threat to them. He didn't care. "Let's stop the small wooden boat further away." Okay. Move Forest controlled the small wooden boat to stop at a place slightly further away and then went ashore. "Which way should we go?" Yin Shui turned to look at Mo Xiao Bai. Mo Xiao Bai looked at the white light around them. In a radius of less than 1 kilometer, there were only a few lines of misfortune at the edges. Moreover, the lines of misfortune were coming from outside the radius. It was obvious that there was still some distance to go. Mo Xiao Bai thought for a while and randomly chose the direction of a light gray line of misfortune. They moved in that direction. "Let's look this way." Okay. No one objected and nodded. During this time, Mo Xiao Bai had been leading the way. They had gained a lot. After a while, Mo Xiao Bai's expression changed. This was because the color of the line of misfortune in front of them was getting darker as they got closer. It went from light gray to dark gray, then to dark gray, and finally to a deep black line of misfortune. Mo Xiao Bai, he looked at the black line of misfortune a kilometer away and couldn't help but gulp. Then, he made a subtle turn and led Yin Shui and the others in another direction. During this time, he moved as quietly as he could. Although they were far away, Mo Xiaobai was still afraid of disturbing the powerhouse that the black line of misfortune corresponded to. Although he didn't know what it was right to stay away. Along the way, they passed through forests, rivers, hills, and other places. Because of the white line of misfortune, Mo Xiaobai avoided it in advance every time he encountered one. Although he didn't know what kind of monster was at the end of the line of misfortune, it was probably very strong. The worst line of misfortune was dark gray, and there were a few dark gray ones. However, the only dark black line of misfortune they saw was the one at the beginning. It was probably because they were unlucky. After a few hours, Mo Xiaobai suddenly stopped in his tracks. He turned his head and looked in a direction to the right. His heart was beating violently. At the edge of the white line of misfortune, he saw a faint red line and a black line intertwined. There was a line of good luck. Mo Xiaobai was overjoyed. He stealthily led Yin Shui and the others in the direction of the good luck line. Along the way, Mo Xiaobai and the others gradually got closer to the area where the lines of misfortune and good luck intertwined. However, what made Mo Xiaobai's heart heavy was that as they got closer, Mo Xiaobai realized that the color of the line of misfortune was getting darker. When Mo Xiaobai and the others arrived in front of a cliff by the lake, he realized that the line of misfortune was floating out from the bottom of the cliff. The color was so dark that it was almost glowing. It was even more exaggerated than the black line of misfortune they encountered before. This Mo Xiaobai looked at the pitch-black line of misfortune and his heart trembled. What kind of expert was this line of misfortune corresponding to? They would die if they touched it, right? Although there was a bright red line of good luck beside the line of misfortune, Mo Xiaobai had no intention of looking at it. Although the treasure was precious, one needed to be alive to take it. Mo Xiaobai stood at the edge of the cliff and looked down at the dark lake. It was as if it was bottomless and would swallow him up at any time. Seeing Mo Xiaobai looking down at the bottom of the cliff, the others also craned their necks to look. When they saw the deep lake, Li Mu Er said eagerly, "Xiaobai, is there a treasure down there? Why don't we go down and take a look?" Forrest was also looking forward to it. Mo Xiaobai, looking at the eagerness of the others, he was speechless. If they went down, they probably wouldn't be able to get back up, all right? He smiled and said, "How could there be a treasure down there? I was just curious that there was such a cliff by the lake, so I just wanted to take a look. There seems to be a problem here." At this moment, Yin Shui's voice was heard. Mo Xiaobai was stunned, his heart shocked. Could it be that Yin Shui found something strange inside? His mind turned quickly, and he planned to trick Koff, persuade them to leave this ominous place. He turned his head and saw Yin Shui looking at a sapling that was only half the height of a person. She pointed at a broken branch on the sapling. The cut was extremely sharp. This branch should have been cut off by a sharp weapon. The adventurers we met before, everyone's eyes flashed as they thought of the ship. I'm afraid they passed by here. Forrest looked down at the ground. There were no traces on the messy black gravel. I wonder where those people went. When Mo Xiaobai saw them frowning in deep thought, he glanced at the floating misfortune line. Those people, did they go down there? But he didn't want to go down there. It was too dangerous. Mo Xiaobai said calmly, "Let's be careful too. Maybe we'll meet them later. Let's keep looking and see if there's a merfolk base." Okay. Yin Shui and the others didn't think anything was wrong and nodded. Mo Xiaobai also led a few people to continue searching for possible fishermen encampments. In the afternoon, Mo Xiaobai saw the faint red and gray lines at the edge of the white line in front of him again. There was another line of good luck. However, when he saw the intertwined lines of misfortune, he felt a little nervous. He hoped that he wouldn't encounter a black line of misfortune this time. He led Yin Shui and the others in the direction where the lines of good luck and misfortune intertwined. Soon, they arrived at the edge of another island. It was a notch on the island. There were cliffs on 3 sides and an open space formed by black gravel below. Outside the open space was North Green Lake. Mo Xiaobai stood on the cliff and looked down. The lines of misfortune and good luck floated out from the bottom of the cliff he was on. Mo Xiaobai sighed in relief. The lines of misfortune were only light gray, but the red lines were dazzling. Mo Xiaobai looked at the light gray lines of misfortune and was a little confused. How could there be such a big difference? However, he didn't think too much about it. He lowered his head and looked at the bottom of the cliff where the lines of misfortune and good luck floated out. He frowned slightly, as if he had discovered something. Seeing Mo Xiaobai's expression, Ji Feibai's eyes lit up. He said expectantly, "Xiaobai, did you discover something?" Mo Xiaobai heard this and smiled. "No, I just thought that the terrain here was good and wanted to go down and take a look." Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Mu Lin looked down with a puzzled expression. Wasn't it just a notch? How was it good? However, he didn't say anything. The few of them casually stepped on the rocks on the cliff and arrived at the open space. Mo Xiaobai looked in the direction where the lines of misfortune and good luck floated out and was stunned. He didn't see anything from above, but when he came down, Mo Xiaobai realized that the lines of misfortune and good luck floated out from a rock. Could it be inside the rock? Mo Xiaobai raised his eyebrows. How could he let people know that there was a treasure in this rock? Did he suddenly want to use the rock to practice his sword? Or did he want to cut down the rock and take it back for his collection? While Mo Xiaobai was thinking, Yin Shui and the others were also looking around. There doesn't seem to be anything here. Kong Xiuran scratched his head and looked honest. Yin Shui had already walked forward and reached the edge of the cliff. Her fair fingers touched the cold and hard rock. "Let's look around." The others nodded in agreement. They began to search nearby. Mo Xiaobai also pretended to copy Yin Shui. He found a place slightly further away from the lines of good luck and misfortune and started to touch the cliff. He was thinking of an excuse to dig up the rock. However, just as Mo Xiaobai was thinking about how to dig up the rock, he suddenly heard Ji Feibai's voice. "Come over quickly. There's a situation here." Mo Xiaobai was stunned. He turned to look in Ji Feibai's direction. He realized that Ji Feibai was standing at the position of the lines of misfortune and good luck and was pointing at the rock wall excitedly. Mo Xiaobai. He was a little stunned. Wasn't this rock wall supposed to be dug up? How did he find out? What's wrong? Mu Forest, Yin Shui, and the others ran over. Mo Xiaobai naturally walked over with a head full of question marks. Ji Feibai saw them walk over and took a deep breath. He said with a serious expression, "Look." As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand and gently touched the rock wall. Suddenly, there was a wisp of black fog flowing around the rock wall. His fingers seemed to pass through the rock wall and then came out again. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw this. Yin Shui's eyes narrowed. An illusion? The few of them looked in the direction of the illusion cautiously. After a moment of silence, Mu Forest said, "What do we do? Do we go in?" Mo Xiaobai glanced at the light gray line of misfortune and nodded slightly. "My defense is the strongest. I'll go in and take a look first." Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Kong Xiuran was touched and a little ashamed. "Xiaobai," Mo Xiaobai waved his hand. He was about to speak when the temperature suddenly dropped. He turned his head and saw Iceman standing beside Yin Shui. She glanced at Mo Xiaobai and said softly, "I'll let Iceman go in and take a look first. If it's attacked, I'll sense it." Mo Xiaobai, "I actually forgot about this thing." He cursed in his heart, but on the surface, he nodded seriously. "Well, let go in then." Yin Shui pointed with her right hand. Iceman slowly walked towards the rock wall. Then, in the black fog, it slowly merged into the rock wall. The atmosphere was a little quiet. After a moment, Iceman walked out, unharmed. Yin Shui said softly, "It wasn't attacked." Mo Xiaobai smiled. "Then let's go in." With that, he walked toward the rock wall. Chapter 136. The black fog flowed, and Mo Xiaobai passed through the stone wall. The next moment, his eyes widened. In front of Mo Xiaobai's eyes, there was a strange space full of black fog. The space was very dark, and the visibility was very low. Mo Xiaobai looked at this silent and dark, strange space and was a little surprised. What is this place? And in this strange space, there was a dazzling red line of good luck that was constantly twisting in the strange black fog space, meandering to the distance as if leading the way. Is this the way out of the fog? Mo Xiaobai guessed in his heart. Just as Mo Xiaobai was guessing, the black fog behind him surged, and Yin Shui and the others also walked in. This is Yin Shui and the others also saw the vision here and couldn't help but widen their eyes with vigilance. Is this inside the cliff? Ji Fei Bai said in surprise, and at the same time, the long sword in his hand stabbed towards the nearby area. As a result, the long sword in his hand did not stop him at all, as if it was stabbing into the air. Where are we going? Yin Shui glanced around and let Iceman walk around, but did not find anything like traps. She looked at Mo Xiaobai and said softly. Mo Xiaobai glanced at the red line of good luck that seemed to be leading the way, and then looked at the white light on the side. He found that there seemed to be no danger in this area. He thought about it and said, "Let's just walk around and take a look. We should have to leave the fog and find out where the way is." He can't just take them out along the red light, as if he knows the way, can he? That would be too fake. Yin Shui and the others nodded. Then everyone began to look for a way to leave this strange space nearby. Mo Xiaobai found that as they moved, the way the red light twisted changed. With every step, the corresponding distortion of the red light became very large. Mo Xiaobai guessed that this was probably a maze-type illusion. If there was no red light, he might not have been able to find the exit. However, after walking for some distance, the faces of the people in the forest of wood changed. This was because they realized that they couldn't find the entrance. They looked at the black fog around them with solemn expressions. "I think we're lost." Lemur looked around and said, "It doesn't seem like it. This illusion is constantly changing as we move. We're really lost." Mu Sunlin frowned and turned to look around. "Then what should we do?" Lemur was a little nervous. Yin Shui's icy blue eyes remained calm. She looked around and said, "Let's keep looking." Mo Xiaobai realized that he couldn't find the entrance either. There was only a red light that led to the inside. There should be something good there. However, since there was a red light, he was not particularly worried. Mo Xiaobai nodded. "Yes, let's keep looking." Then, he took the lead and walked forward. Yin Shui and the others followed behind Mo Xiaobai. They frowned and began to record the positions they passed. Mo Xiaobai, on the other hand, stealthily led them along the red light. After a while, the black fog in front of them became thinner. Wood Forest opened his eyes wide and smiled. "Look, the fog is thinner. It should be the exit." "Yes, I'm afraid so." Lemur also smiled excitedly. The few of them quickly moved in the direction where the fog was thinner. At this moment, Mo Xiaobai felt a chill on his body. It felt like he had passed through the entrance of the Void Realm. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. The black fog had completely dissipated. He appeared in a dry cave. The cave was about 10 meters wide. There were stones embedded at the top and the edges that shone with a dim yellow light. Deep in the cave, there was a passage that led to an unknown place. The dazzling red line of good luck floated out from the passage. At this moment, Kong Xiu Rant's voice suddenly sounded. "Look behind you." Mo Xiaobai was stunned. He turned around and saw a black fog flowing behind him. It condensed into a ring that looked like the entrance of the Void Realm. This black ring was stuck to the stone wall. It looked a little strange. Obviously, they came out from there. "There's another passage inside. Let's go take a look," Yin Shui said softly. The others nodded in agreement. At this moment, on the ground, the shadows of Mo Xiaobai and the others suddenly had black fog floating out. The black fog that floated out from the shadows condensed into black figures not far from them. Deep in the murloc's nest, Su-Yin, who was at the front, held a red spear that was burning with flames. The spear condensed and pierced through the neck of a murloc commander that was taller than her. The murloc commander's eyes widened. There was a hint of unwillingness in his eyes. Blood flowed out from his mouth. He roared in a low voice. "My king!" The roar stopped abruptly. His body fell heavily to the ground. Su-Yin waved the spear in her hand and raised her delicate eyebrows. "I don't care if you're a dog or a meow." A beam of emerald green light descended from the sky and merged into Su-Yin's body. The wounds on her arm quickly healed. Captain Liu on the side smiled. As expected of Su-Yin from the Akatsuki Academy. Her battle strength is really strong. Suing grinned. She was a little proud of herself. Captain Liu turned around and looked at the end of the passage. There was a huge stone door. The stone door was over 4 meters tall. There were some vertical lines carved on it. It didn't seem to have any meaning. That should be the Murloc commander's position. Everyone be careful. Everyone nodded. Their faces were serious. In order to enter the Murloc's nest, they were more or less injured. Clearly, it wasn't easy. The strongest person in this Murloc's nest was probably not weak. After everyone recovered, Captain Liu walked forward and pushed open the huge stone door with one hand. Creak, creak, creak. Sounds of friction could be heard. The stone door opened. Everyone walked in cautiously. Behind the stone door, there was a big, empty hall. In the innermost part of the hall, there was a huge stone chair. On the stone chair, there was an extremely tall Murloc with a crown on his head. He was holding a black trident in his hand. After seeing the white fishman, a few people's expressions changed, including the people from Azure Edge. Captain Liu stared coldly at the white fishman. "Bai Lin, I didn't expect it to be you." Hearing Captain Liu's words, everyone's faces changed. He's Bai Lin, the Murloc commander who attacked Ledong Town 6 years ago and caused a lot of casualties? After so many years, I didn't expect him to be hiding here. Bai Lin looked at everyone who walked in. His golden eyes didn't waver at all. He grinned hideously. I didn't expect anyone to recognize me. Captain Liu's eyes were cold. He clenched the sword in his hand. "This time, you won't be able to escape." "Ha ha!" Bai Lin threw his head back and laughed. He suddenly stood up from the stone chair. His 3-meter-tall body looked very imposing. "You're quite strong to be able to come here, but you want to defeat me. Ha ha ha. Weaklings, you can come try." Hearing Bai Lin call them weaklings, Serene wasn't happy. She pursed her lips. Flames seemed to burn in her red eyes. At the same time, flames gathered around her body, forming lotus-like patterns on the surface of her body. Legendary grade origin skill, Red Lotus Battle Body. She swung the spear in her hand and stomped on the ground with her slender legs. Dong! Cracks appeared on the ground. Her body instantly turned into a ball of flames and rushed towards Bai Lin. Legendary grade origin skill, Scarlet Flowing Light. Whoosh! Flames rose from the crimson spear, and the temperature in the cavern instantly rose by a notch. Ha! Suyin's spear stabbed towards Bai Lin. Feeling the powerful flames, even the Lord grade Bai Lin didn't dare to be careless. The black trident in his hand flickered with blue light. Water condensed in the air and wrapped around the trident. He took a step forward and swung the trident with both hands at the flaming spear. Legendary grade origin skill, Heavy Water Flow. Boom! The spear and trident collided. Water and fire collided, and the entire hall trembled. The shockwave spread out, and water vapor gushed out. Su-in, who was charging forward, had a drastic change in expression. His body was instantly sent flying backwards. His face was slightly pale as he flew back to the front of the crowd. Dong, 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 he took a few steps back. Every step he took left a shallow footprint on the hard rock. Yo-Yo, are you all right? Natsu Ki's expression changed. A green light entered Su Yin's body. Immediately, Su Yin's face regained its color. She looked at Bai Lin in front of her with some fear. "I'm fine." The others also had serious expressions when they saw the two of them collide. They had seen Su Yin's strength on the way here. Most 6 Apertures experts were rarely her match. Moreover, her attacks were like fire. She specialized in brute force. They didn't expect Bai Lin to force her back. This Merfolk Lord was so strong. Get ready to kill this guy. Everyone do your own thing. Those with amplification origin skills, I'll have to trouble you. When they heard this, everyone, including Natsu Ki, nodded. Natsu Ki waved the staff in his hand. Streaks of green light entered everyone's bodies. Legendary origin skill, Natural Breathing. Epic origin skill, Life's Rhythm. The others also surged with origin power, buffing everyone with amplification origin skills. Body strengthening, Gale Possession, Earth Spirit Protection, etc. Rays of light flashed, and everyone felt their combat power rise by a large margin in an instant. When Bai Lin saw this from afar, he could no longer hold back. He let out a low roar and took large strides towards the group. Boom, boom, boom. The battle instantly began. Elemental attacks and arrows were fired at by Lin from afar. The body fundamentalists, who specialized in close combat, also charged at Bai Lin. The sound of metal clashing and the aftermath of the collision instantly filled the entire cavern. Bai Lin was a beginner rank 6 lord. He was extremely strong. Although he was facing more than 20 attacks, he was still able to hold his ground. However, every time Bai Lin wanted to break through the melee experts in front of him to attack the healers in the back, he would be blocked by those with thick skin. Although Bai Lin's attacks were powerful, there were still a few experts who could block a few of his attacks. Serene, in particular, was not weak in both defense and attack. After receiving various amplifications, she was even able to fight him to a standstill. As time passed, Bai Lin's origin power and stamina were being depleted faster and faster. Gradually, his aura became weaker and weaker, and wounds began to appear on his body. Blood slowly flowed out from the wounds. Boom! Su Yin's spear was wrapped in flames. She took advantage of Bai Lin blocking an attack from an Azure Edge expert to sweep the spear at his waist. Crack, crack, crack. Terrifying energy surged, shattering the scales on Bai Lin's waist and charring his flesh. The energy entered his body, causing his ribs to crack. Bai Lin's body flew backward and landed heavily on the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. At this time, he heard a gust of wind. His heart trembled. Enduring the pain, he immediately turned around and dodged to the side. Boom! A fireball blasted at Bai Lin's previous location, sending debris flying everywhere. He had just evaded the fireball when another expert arrived in front of Bai Lin and slashed at him with a blade wrapped in origin power. Bai Lin blocked with his trident, but he was sent flying and coughed up another mouthful of blood. His aura was much weaker than before. Seeing this, the others planned to follow up with another attack. At this time, strands of strange black light flickered on Bai Lin's body. An incomparably powerful aura gushed out from his body. There was even a strange black mist flowing out of its huge white body. Its originally white scales were slowly turning white. Seeing this, everyone's heart trembled. They retreated and looked at Bai Lin in the distance with vigilance. What's going on? What kind of strange origin skill is this? Everyone felt the powerful aura from Bai Lin's body. They gripped their weapons tightly, their expressions serious. At this time, Bai Lin raised his head. His originally large golden eyes had turned completely black, and he looked extremely evil. This aura is the demon god's aura. Captain Lu's pupils shrank. He looked at Bai Lin cautiously, his heart trembling. What? Demon god? Everyone's eyes widened, and their hair stood on end. Nothing good could come out of anything related to the demon god. Everyone's vigilance was raised to the extreme. Keek. The completely black Bai Lin raised his head and let out a strange laugh. Black mist circulated around his body, and he charged toward the group. Su Yin frowned and activated her red lotus battle form. She moved forward and swept her spear through the air toward Bai Lin. Bai Lin smiled sinisterly and swung his trident at the spear. Clang! With a sharp sound of metal clashing, Su Yin's body flew backward, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. What? Everyone's eyes widened in shock. At this time, Bai Lin appeared in front of a night creature woman in a black robe. He swung his trident, and the wind howled. The night creature woman's face turned pale. She realized that she could no longer dodge. At this time, the pupils of a barbarian warrior at the side contracted violently. He held a large shield with both hands and blocked in front of the night creature woman. Boom! The barbarian warrior's shield caved in, and his huge body was sent flying like a volleyball. The bones in his hands shattered, and blood spurted out. He crashed heavily into the night creature woman at the side. The night creature woman was sent flying as well, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard on her slender body. In an instant, both of them were seriously injured. Seeing this scene, everyone else's eyes widened as shock flashed in their eyes. Captain Lu snapped back to his senses immediately and roared, "Restrain him! Slowly wear him down. Don't get close to him." As she spoke, The staff in Natsuki's hand had already flashed with an emerald green light. Vines broke out of the ground and wrapped around Bai Lin's body. Before everyone could rejoice, the vines were already shrouded by a black mist. Then Bai Lin growled and his body shook, tearing the vines apart. Natsuki's pupils constricted, and he said hurriedly, "It's too strong. I can't control it." "Retreat," Captain Liu shouted decisively. Just as everyone was about to retreat through the stone door, Bai Lin seemed to know what they were thinking. He turned into a stream of light and appeared in front of the stone door. With a kick, he closed the stone door. Then, those strange pitch-black eyeballs stared at everyone in the distance. At the sight of this, everyone's scalps went numb, and they fell into dead silence. Chapter 137. On the other side of the hole, black fog floated out from Mo Xiao Bai and the other shadows and condensed into strange black shadows. There were exactly 5 of them. Seeing this, Mo Xiao Bai and the others were stunned. They looked at the black shadows in the distance cautiously. "What the hell is this?" Kong Xiu Ran's voice was trembling. The others looked at the black shadows and felt a chill run down their spines. This thing was too strange. It floated out from their shadows. Just as the 5 of them were stunned, 5 black fog condensed into black shadows and charged toward Mo Xiao Bai and the others silently. Mo Xiao Bai realized that the 5 black shadows' auras corresponded to their cultivations. The black shadows charging toward them were at 2 aperture level 8, but their auras were not weak. They were slightly stronger than the leaders of the same level. However, this level of strength was no threat to Mo Xiao Bai. The line of misfortune on the black shadows was only a dark gray color. His eyes turned cold. His body turned into sword light and disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, 3 white sword lights and 1 blood-red sword light slashed out at the same time. Swish, 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 swish. The black fog on the black shadows flickered. They were almost instantly cut into pieces and disappeared on the spot. On the other side, Yin Shui and Mu Lin also used all their strength to kill the black shadows. Kong Xiu Ran and Li Mu'er were not as strong as Mo Xiao Bai and the other 2. At this moment, they were locked in a fierce battle with their own shadows. Mu Sunlin attacked, and 2 gusts of wind directly tore the 2 shadows into pieces. Seeing the black fog dissipate, Mo Xiao Bai smiled and said, "There shouldn't be any danger. Let's go in and take a look." The others nodded. Then, they walked into the tunnel. The tunnel was winding. After walking for a while, Mo Xiao Bai and the others arrived at an empty hall. The hall was about 10 meters wide. On a brown stone platform in the middle, there was a black statue. It was a statue of a pitch-black, 3-headed snake that was coiled together. The 3-headed snake raised its head and opened its mouth to roar. There was a black crystal in the mouth of each head. This statue is a statue of the evil god. When Woodforest saw the 3-headed snake statue, his pupils shrank, and he couldn't help but exclaim. Yin Shui frowned, and her face suddenly became dignified. "This, I seem to have heard of it. It seems to be the astral evil god worshipped by a dark sect." Kong Xiu Ran and Li Mu'er's faces turned pale. Speaking of evil gods, it was obviously not a good thing. When Mo Xiao Bai saw the statue, he immediately thought of the destroyer statue he had encountered before. Normally, only super experts would have their own statues and accept offerings, right? At this moment, he discovered a red ray of light flowing on the 3-headed snake's statue. This red ray of light was located at the abdomen of the 3-headed snake. "What should we do?" Lemur swallowed her saliva and asked. Yin Shui frowned as she looked at the statue from afar. She gripped her bow tightly with both hands. "We have to destroy this statue of the evil god. Although I don't know why there's a statue of the evil god here, we can't leave it as it is." Woodforest nodded. Yin Shui is right. If we leave the statue of the evil god here, something bad will happen. This was a lesson learned in history. Then how do we destroy this statue? The black fog outside looks different from the one we encountered before. What the F***? Xiao Bai, what are you doing? Lemur was halfway through her sentence when she suddenly turned to look at Mo Xiao Bai. Her eyes were wide open, and her face was filled with fear. When the others heard this, they also turned to look at Mo Xiao Bai. Then, they all looked at Mo Xiao Bai in fear. This was because they realized that Mo Xiao Bai had a black short spear in his hand and was aiming at them. When they looked over, the short spear in Mo Xiao Bai's hand had already flown out. Yeah. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their minds were filled with question marks. This was the statue of the evil god. Who knew what would happen if they touched it? This guy didn't even hesitate when he attacked. Cold sweat broke out on the backs of several people. At this moment, the short spear had already shot into the black fog. After shooting into the black fog, the short spear let out a sizzling sound and started to corrode. It was obvious that the black fog had a strong corrosive effect. Before the short spear was completely corroded, it pierced into the abdomen of the three-headed snake statue, where the red light was flowing. In the next moment, the three-headed snake statue suddenly let out a sharp roar. The strange roar made everyone's face turn pale. Just as everyone was about to retreat, the black fog around the statue dissipated. Then, with the short spear as the epicenter, the statue cracked. Then, with a loud boom, it exploded. Black debris flew everywhere. Everyone stared at the shattered, three-headed snake statue with their eyes wide open. They were stunned. In the next moment, Kong Xiu Ran, who was holding a giant shield, poked his head out from behind and looked around. The corner of his mouth twitched. That's it. Mu Forest's handsome and elegant face was also filled with confusion. Then, he turned to look at Mo Xiao Bai and couldn't help but say, "Xiao Bai, aren't you too impulsive? What if something happened?" Mo Xiao Bai blinked and said innocently, "Isn't it fine now? Everyone." They didn't want to talk anymore. Right at this moment, a strange roar suddenly sounded in Mo Xiao Bai's mind. Hiss! At the same time, he felt three pairs of blood-red eyes surrounded by black fog appear in his mind for a moment and then disappear. This was Mo Xiao Bai's heart trembled. He couldn't have been targeted by the demon god, right? However, Mo Xiao Bai didn't care. It was too difficult for the demon god to come to Azure anyway. Even if it targeted him, it couldn't do anything to him. If there was danger, the white light would definitely turn into a line of misfortune. Mo Xiao Bai was no longer worried. The crystals on the ground. Look, these are epic items. At this moment, Li Mu'er exclaimed. Mo Xiao Bai and the others looked down at the ground. Among the black debris, 3 crystals were scattered and flashing with orange light. Epic-level, transcendent materials. Everyone's eyes widened. Epic-level, transcendent materials were hard to come by. Mo Xiao Bai went forward and picked up the 3 crystals. At this moment, Li Mu'er said, "I don't need to share this transcendent material." Kong Xiu Ran nodded. "I don't need it either. After all, I didn't help much." Hearing this, Mo Xiao Bai shrugged and did not object. Then, he said to Yin Shui and Mu Forest, "Then the 3 of us will share it." After all, the 3 of them were the strongest. The 3 of them each took a piece of black crystal. At this moment, on the stone platform, where the statue was, a white light suddenly appeared. The white light outlined a complicated array. On top of the array, a light pillar appeared. Looking at the array, Yin Shui took a look and her pupils constricted. A teleportation array? Mu Forest nodded and was a little confused. Where does this teleport to? As for Mo Xiao Bai, as he looked at the array formation, his heart was filled with excitement. On top of the teleportation array, there was a bright red light. He smiled and said, "It should be the exit, right? After we came in, we couldn't get out, right? It should be from here." Hearing Mo Xiao Bai's words, Mu Forest and the others were enlightened. Although they felt that there was something wrong, they didn't know what it was. Let's go and take a look. North Green Lake. On the deck of a black wooden ship, a few black-robed men stood there quietly, looking in the direction of the Murlocs Island. One of the black-robed men chuckled. Looking at the time, those guys should have reached the Murlocs Island by now, right? No. Maybe they have already reached by Lin's throne. Ha! I really want to see their expressions when they face the deified by Lin. It will be amazing. I heard that there are prodigies from a Mu family and the Su family who came to investigate this time. People from those two families died there. They must remember it very well, right? This is all because of the great deacon's wise decision. Of course, the great deacon is wise and powerful. He never misses anything. Hearing the flattery of his subordinates, the thin lips of the leader of the black-robed men curled up slightly under the hood, revealing a smile. He opened his mouth and was about to speak when his body suddenly trembled violently. It was as if he had lost all his strength, and he fell to the deck. His body curled up, and the veins on his hands bulged. A black mist drifted out from his body. Ah! A series of sharp and miserable screams came from his mouth, catching the other black-robed men off guard and causing them to freeze on the spot. Deacon, how are you feeling? Deacon, are you all right? Then they came back to their senses and quickly squatted down, wanting to get closer. At this moment, the black fog around the deacon's body seemed to have been triggered. It surged into the body of another deacon who had reached out to touch the deacon. Suddenly, the black-robed man's body fell heavily to the ground with a sizzling sound. In just a short moment, his body seemed to have evaporated, leaving only a black robe on the ground. Seeing this, the other black-robed men who wanted to get closer were stunned. They retreated as if they had met a devil, not daring to go forward. After a long time, the black-robed deacon's screams finally stopped. Panting sounds came from the black robe, and the remaining black-robed men looked at each other before slowly approaching. Deacon, are you all right? After a moment of silence, the deacon's hoarse voice sounded. Help me up. The others looked at each other, and only then did they dare to go forward and help the deacon up. They could feel the deacon's body trembling uncontrollably. Their bodies could not help but tremble, and their palms were sweaty. Deacon, what happened? One of the black-robed men asked cautiously. After a moment of silence, the deacon's lips that had turned pale under his hood were tightly pressed together. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the Murloc's lair island. His voice was hoarse, and there was some disbelief in it. My god statue has been destroyed. What? Hearing this, the other black-robed men trembled and could not help but exclaim, how is that possible? How could a six-apertured body fundamentalist find the altar with the shadow boundary? Yeah, it's protected by my god's godly power. Everyone's voice was trembling. They could not believe it was true. Not only them, even the black-robed deacon was dumbfounded at this moment. He looked in the direction of the island, and his heart was filled with shock. What happened there? Is there a secret on that island that we don't know? After a moment of silence, one of the black-robed men asked, Deacon, what should we do now? The deacon was silent for a moment, and then he said, let's go back first, and then we'll go to that island. Maybe there are secrets on that island. Hearing this, the others all nodded. In the Murloc's lair, by Lin's throne hall. Clang! There was the sound of metal clashing. The deified Bai Lin was holding his trident and swinging it towards Xiao Dongmu. At this time, Su Yin appeared in front of Xiao Dongmu. She held her spear and blocked the trident. However, that terrifying power made Su Yin, who was already injured, pale. She spat out a mouthful of blood, and her legs were bent under the violent power. She almost knelt on the ground. Yo-yo! Natsu Ki's expression changed. He waved his hands, and two wooden men rushed toward Bai Lin. They held wooden spears in their hands and stabbed at Bai Lin. However, when the wooden spears touched Bai Lin's black armor, they broke immediately. The armor was not damaged at all. However, the wooden men's power still made Bai Lin step back. Su Yin also took advantage of this time to retreat. She arrived in front of Natsu Ki, her hands trembling. Blood dripped down her arms and onto her red spear. She gasped for breath as she looked at Bai Lin. Her expression was grim. Then, she looked around. Less than half of the original 20 or so experts were still standing. Some of them were seriously injured, and some of them were dead. However, even the remaining people were more or less injured at this moment. Bai Lin, on the other hand, looked completely unharmed. Captain Lu's face was pale. He looked around and whispered, "This monster Is he always in this state? What do we do? A rabbit man archer's eyes flashed with despair. If we keep dragging this out, it might disappear soon. A hint of bitterness flashed through Captain Lu's eyes. Ha 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 ha. Bai Lin raised his head and laughed. Then, he walked toward them again. When they saw this, everyone's faces changed. They all fell back. Right at this moment, Bai Lin suddenly faltered, and his laughter also came to an abrupt halt. Everyone was stunned when they saw Bai Lin suddenly stop. They were on guard. For a moment, the hall fell into silence. After a few breaths, Bai Lin still did not move. Everyone could not help but look at each other. What's going on? The rabbit man archer had already run far away. He looked at Bai Lin and could not help but ask, could it be the state has ended? Everyone's eyes lit up. They were pleasantly surprised. At this moment, Bai Lin's body suddenly shook. Wisps of black mist floated out of his body. Hiss! Damn mortal! A strange and sharp roar sounded. The black mist slowly turned into the blurry figure of a three-headed snake. Its blood-red eyes swept across everyone. Seeing this scene, Captain Lu, the other Azure Edge members, and the martial fundamentalists all opened their eyes wide in shock. Yu Jiang, it's him, Shadow Three-Headed Snake God. Why would he appear here? The evil god of the astral plane, an absolute elite. Just when everyone's eyes were filled with fear, Yu Jiang's figure turned into wisps of mist and dissipated. Everyone was stunned when they saw this. Then, they realized what had happened. Their faces were still filled with fear. It's a phantom. Why would the phantom of that god be here? Could it be a trap set by the Shadow Church? Just when everyone's minds were filled with question marks, Bai Lin suddenly screamed from afar. His originally black scales were now slowly turning white, but this was not the end. His originally strong body seemed to have been absorbed by something. His flesh and blood slowly dried up, almost turning into bones. His aura became very weak. He couldn't even hold the trident in his hand anymore. It slipped out of his hand and fell heavily to the ground. In the next moment, his vitality was also cut off. He fell heavily to the ground and turned into a pile of bones. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. It seems that his strength and vitality were taken away by that person. That was deified? Did the Murlocs also join the Shadow Church? Just when everyone was puzzled, a formation suddenly appeared in front of the stone chairs in the hall. Everyone who had just relaxed became nervous again. What is it this time? Chapter 138. A white light flashed above the formation, and a figure slowly walked out. He had black hair and black eyes, and he was very handsome. He was so handsome that he could make a living with his face. After seeing this familiar face, Natsuki and Su-in were both stunned. Su-in opened her mouth and shouted, "Hey, what the hell?" Shout bye-bye. Hearing Su-yin's words, everyone was stunned. They turned to look at Su-in, and then at Emo Xiaobai. Emo Xiaobai walked out of the teleportation formation and was also stunned. He thought it was an exit formation, but it wasn't. And he even met Su-in and Natsuki. He waved at Su-in and Natsuki and smiled. Senior Su-in, Senior Natsuki, hello, I didn't expect you to be here. Everyone, hello my ass. Can't you see that we're all injured? Su-in and Natsuki were also speechless. Natsuki couldn't help but ask, Xiaobai, why are you here? I walked out of the teleportation formation. Emo Xiaobai pointed at the teleportation formation behind him. Teleportation formation? Everyone was stunned. At this moment, the teleportation formation flashed again. Yin Shui, Kong Xiuran, and Li Mu walked out of the wood forest one after another. After seeing the wood forest, Natsuki raised her eyebrows slightly. Forest? After coming out of the wood forest, his face was full of smiles. After hearing that nightmarish voice, the smile on his face suddenly froze. His body trembled, and he slowly turned his head. After seeing Natsuki, he revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. Sister, it's you. What a coincidence. Natsuki nodded gently and looked at the wood forest with a gentle smile. Well, what a coincidence. I haven't been to Akatsuki for so long. Why are you here now? Are Aren't I teaming up with Little White to do a quest? When Move Forest heard this, the corners of his mouth twitched as he replied with a hollow laugh. Natsuki also knew that Move Forest had a good relationship with Mo Xiaobai. He glanced at him and nodded gently. His smile became even gentler. The holidays are just around the corner. Don't forget to test the medicine when the time comes. Forestwood's face twitched. Oh. Mo Xiaobai looked at the forest sympathetically. Yin Shui nodded at Natsuki and Su-in. Sister Xiaodong, Sister Yin. Natsuki and Su-in also greeted Yin Shui. Mo Xiaobai glanced at the three of them. He didn't expect them to know each other. Then he remembered that the three of them were from the top families in the empire. It was normal for them to know each other. At this moment, Lemur suddenly cried out in surprise. What a huge murloc! Hearing Lemur's cry of surprise, Mo Xiaobai turned to look at the ground. Then he froze and his pupils contracted violently. He noticed that beside the huge murloc's corpse, there was a thorny crown covered in moss. At this moment, there was a dazzling red light flashing on the crown. Mo Xiaobai looked at the dirty-looking crown in confusion. Where did he see this before? Why did it feel so familiar? The next moment, Mo Xiaobai's heart skipped a beat as he thought of something. It's that. In King Ming's diary, wasn't that the same crown that King Ming was wearing? It looked exactly the same. His heart skipped a beat. This dirty crown, it can't be that, right? The King Ming's crown from ancient times? While Mo Xiaobai was still in shock, Su-in rolled her eyes and spoke. Nonsense. This is the Murloc Overlord. We were almost killed by this guy. Mo Xiaobai looked away from the crown when he heard Su-yin's words. He looked at Su-in in surprise. Even you and Sister Xiaotong aren't a match for this guy. Natsuki smiled and said, if it was before, this Murloc wouldn't be much of a threat to us. However, I didn't expect Bai Lin to be deified and possessed by the diabolic force. His strength increased greatly. Diabolic force? Move Forest exclaimed. Seeing Mo Xiaobai and the other's strange expressions, Captain Liu immediately frowned. What's wrong? What did you find? The diabolic force was something Azure Blade had to pay attention to. Mo Xiaobai and the others looked at each other. Then, Yin Shui pointed at Mo Xiaobai and said, just a while ago, he broke a statue of the diabolic god. Natsuki, Su-in, Captain Liu, and the others. Suddenly, the atmosphere fell silent. Everyone looked at the innocent Mo Xiaobai, and their minds were full of question marks. After a moment of silence, Captain Liu widened his eyes and looked at Mo Xiaobai. You broke a statue of the diabolic god. Really? Mo Xiaobai was a bit embarrassed by the woman in front of him. He scratched his head. Yeah? Anyway, it's just a black snake with 3 heads. I don't know what statue it was either. This teleportation formation appeared after I broke the statue. Mo Xiaobai pointed at the slowly dissipating array formation behind him. It probably ran out of energy. Hearing Mo Xiaobai's words, Su-in and the others held their breaths. They looked at each other in shock. Nether River. That's him. Nether River? Move Forest asked in confusion. What diabolic god is that? Natsuki looked at Move Forest. It's the name of the diabolic god that you broke. It's also a diabolic god worshipped by the Church of Shadows. Mo Xiaobai and the others had a look of realization. When Captain Liu and the others saw Mo Xiaobai and the others, they looked at each other and smiled bitterly. No wonder the power of the Nether River in Bai Lin's body suddenly dissipated. So it was this little brother who broke the statue. I'm afraid this incident is targeted at us. Everyone started discussing. Natsuki and Su-in looked at Mo Xiaobai with complicated expressions. Natsuki smiled and flipped her long green hair. Xiaobai, I owe you for saving my life this time. Hee. Me too. Su-in giggled and patted Mo Xiaobai's shoulder. Then, she pulled at her own wound and cried out in pain. Tears came out of her eyes. Natsuki looked helpless and continued to treat her. Mo Xiaobai looked at Su-yin's pained expression and almost laughed out loud. He waved his hand. Sister Xiaodong, Sister Yin, you're welcome. You've taken care of me a lot during this time. Mo Xiaobai was not a heartless person. Natsuki and Su-in had been very good to him during this time. He would not force them to repay him. I knew you could do it. Su-in giggled and punched his chest again. Then he cried out in pain again. Natsuki also smiled and didn't say anything. Natsuki looked at the smile on his sister's face and then looked at Mo Xiaobai with his eyes wide open. What the hell? What was going on? He looked at Mo Xiaobai in disbelief. I treat you as my brother, but you want to be my brother-in-law? Wait a minute. If he asked Xiaobai to take care of his sister in the future and not let her test the medicine, it wouldn't be impossible. Would Forrest's eyes lit up as he discovered the door to a new world? On the other hand, Yin Shui raised her eyebrows. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't say anything. Captain Liu also smiled and said, That's right. This time, all of us owe you a favor for saving our lives. You can choose first from the loot here. Hearing this, the others nodded and didn't object. Bai Lin's trident was a legendary rank 5 weapon, and he also had 2 rare-grade rings and a legendary belt. Apart from these, he also had a lot of origin crystals and transcendent materials in his spatial ring. It could be said that the loot was quite good, and Mo Xiaobai thought for a while and took a portion of the transcendent materials. After all, he had no use for the weapons. If he sold them, their value would be about the same as the transcendent materials. He could also ask Natsuki to refine the herbs in the transcendent materials. Moreover, he couldn't just take them for himself. He had to share them with Yin Shui and the others, so it wouldn't be easy to split the weapons. As for the moss-covered crown on the ground, no one wanted it at all, because this thing wasn't even a piece of origin equipment. And Mo Xiaobai curiously picked up the crown and sized it up. This thing really did look like the Monarch of Meng's crown that he saw in the diary of Monarch Meng. Moreover, the red light floating on it wasn't fake. Maybe you should take it back and give it to Meng's sensei. Xiaobai, why are you holding this dirty thing in your hand? Su-in glanced at Mo Xiaobai and couldn't help but roll her eyes. Mo Xiaobai smiled and said, I thought it was a bit strange. I just thought it was quite rare, so I decided to keep it. With that, he put the crown away. Seeing this, the others didn't think much of it. It wasn't a piece of origin equipment, so it couldn't even increase one's strength. It could only be used as a collection. Soon, everyone finished sharing the loot. As for the mission rewards, they would have to go back and turn the mission to receive them. Mo Xiaobai realized that the teleportation formation had completely disappeared. However, he didn't care. He could leave with Natsuki and the others. Just as Mo Xiaobai was about to leave with Natsuki and the others, he suddenly stopped and felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly realized that in a seemingly ordinary corner of the cavern hall, there was light flowing again. The color of this light was completely different from what Mo Xiaobai had seen before. The black line of misfortune was so black that it was suffused with a purple light. The red line of good luck was also extremely dazzling. It had even turned orange. The 2 lines of light intertwined and hovered above a protruding rock. It was a bit like 2 balls of light. If Mo Xiaobai hadn't glanced at it, he wouldn't have even noticed it. However, looking at the black line of light that was almost purple, Mo Xiaobai silently turned around and left. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even dare to touch the light of this color. It would probably turn cold if he touched it. After leaving the Murloc's lair, Mo Xiaobai silently remembered this location. He planned to come back and take a look when his cultivation was higher. After all, the red light that had turned orange looked very fragrant. Where's your ship? Natsuki asked. Forrest looked around, identified the direction, and pointed in a direction. Over there. Natsuki nodded lightly. Our ship is not far away. Get on our ship and we'll take you there. Hearing Natsuki's words, Mo Xiaobai and the others naturally didn't refuse and boarded their ship. At Beiqing Lake, Mo Xiaobai and the others bid farewell to Natsuki and Su-in. They were going to send Li Shu and the others back to North Ridge Town, while Natsuki and Su-in were going back to Crimson Orchid City. As for the reward, Su-in and Natsuki would arrange it for them. They didn't need to worry about it. After returning to North Ridge Town, Mo Xiaobai paid Li Shu quite a bit of money as a salary for sending them to the Murloc's lair. At first, Li Shu still refused, but Mo Xiaobai told him that even if he didn't want it, his crew couldn't work for free, right? Thus, Li Shu had no choice but to accept it. That night, Mo Xiaobai treated Lu Qing and the others and Li Shu to a good meal. After a night's rest, they got on their horses and returned to the Akatsuki Academy. As soon as they entered the Akatsuki Academy, Forest smiled and said, "Xiaobai, Yin Shui, we'll go back to Lingxin first." Mo Xiaobai was stunned. "You're not waiting for Sister Xiaotong to come back?" Forest's mouth twitched. He smiled and said, "We're not waiting. We've gained too much this time. When we get back, we need to properly digest our gains. When my sister comes back, you could tell her about it. That's it. We're leaving. Don't send us off. Goodbye." As he said that, he, Li Mu'er, Kong Xiu ran, and Ji Fei by rode towards the forest station. They were so fast that Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui were stunned when they saw them. When they disappeared, Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Mo Xiaobai smiled and said, "Let's return the mounts first, then turn in the mission." Yin Shui nodded lightly. Okay. The two of them arrived at the mount shop at the school gate. When the barbarian uncle saw the two of them, his eyes lit up. "Yo, you two are back? You've been outside for a long time." As he said that, he looked at Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui. A wretched smile appeared on his bearded face. "A single man and a single woman. You've been outside for so long. Not bad, kid." Mo Xiaobai, Yin Shui. This was an old pervert. Yin Shui's cold and pretty face blushed slightly. She snorted coldly and glared at the barbarian uncle with her icy blue eyes. The barbarian uncle was extremely thick-skinned. He didn't feel embarrassed at all. He yawned. "You're here to return the mounts?" Mo Xiaobai nodded. "Okay, take out the mounts." After that, the two of them returned the mounts and walked out of the mount shop. The barbarian uncle behind them was still trying to persuade the young people to control themselves. Yin Shui was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. She wanted to turn around and shoot that old pervert to death with an arrow. Mo Xiaobai looked at her. Her breasts were quite big. "What are you looking at?" Yin Shui seemed to have felt Mo Xiaobai's gaze. She glared at him with her icy blue eyes. Mo Xiaobai looked at Yin Shui's face and said confidently, "I'm looking at you. You're so pretty. Can I look at you?" Yin Shui. She looked at Mo Xiaobai blankly. She didn't expect Mo Xiaobai to be so confident. Then, she rolled her eyes and snorted. She strode forward without waiting for Mo Xiaobai. "Hey, don't walk so fast. What's the rush?" Mo Xiaobai muttered as he chased after her. Yin Shui slowed down slightly. Mo Xiaobai caught up, and the two of them walked side by side to the mission hall. Chapter 139. Mo Xiaobai was all smiles as he walked out of the mission hall. He was in good mood. This time, he had obtained a total of over 2 million credits. The level 4 force cultivation chamber could increase one's cultivation speed by 5 times. 1 hour was only 5,000 credits. Cultivating for 2 hours a day was only worth 10,000 credits. 2 million credits was enough to cultivate for more than half a year. 5,000 credits a day in the gravity room could be used for more than a year. Even the third-year students in Akatsuki didn't have that many credits, let alone the freshmen. As for the other top 100 schools, they might need to wait until the 5th or 6th year to accumulate so many credits. As for the schools that weren't in the top 100, they might not even see so many credits until they graduated. For the next few months, he wouldn't need to go out to do missions. After using up these credits, he should be able to break through to the 3rd aperture. He might even be able to equip himself with a set of rare 3rd-tier equipment. At that time, his combat strength would increase tremendously. Mo Xiaobai was naturally excited. When Yin Shui saw Mo Xiaobai's smug look, a smile appeared on her indifferent face and her red lips twitched. "Isn't it just 2 million credits? Is there a need to be so excited?" Mo Xiaobai couldn't help but roll his eyes. A tycoon like you can't possibly understand this kind of happiness. This guy, after obtaining more than 1 million credits, was only happy for a moment. When he submitted the mission, he saw with his own eyes that this girl still had a few 100,000 credits in her medal. What could he say? This was probably the legendary rich girl, right? Where are you going next? Yin Shui asked. Mo Xiaobai glanced at her. Cultivation. Since I've obtained so many credits, I have to cultivate well. Yin Shui nodded lightly and didn't ask any more questions. Mo Xiaobai thought of the crown he had obtained before. When he returned, he would take a look at that thing. Back at the dormitory, Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui said their goodbyes and went home. After returning home, Mo Xiaobai could not wait to take out the crown of thorns that was covered in moss. He first went to the bathroom and cleaned the moss on the crown of thorns, revealing the crown's original appearance. The crown was silver white in color and carved with thorns. Its color was a little dull, as if it had been eroded by the passage of time. The more Mo Xiaobai looked at it, the more he felt that it was very similar to the crown in King Meng's diary. Could it be true? Mo Xiaobai flipped the crown in his hand and carefully poured origin power into it. Just like before, this thing couldn't absorb origin power. It was not a piece of transcendent equipment at all. In fact, Mo Xiaobai would have thought that it was an ordinary item if it wasn't for the dazzling red light on its surface and the fact that it looked so familiar. After studying it carefully, Mo Xiaobai gave up. It was better to show it to Meng Sensei when the time came. The red light was very strange. Sometimes Mo Xiaobai didn't even know how to activate it. Sometimes it would mysteriously activate on its own. Perhaps this could only be activated after he gave it to Meng Sensei. He stopped thinking about it and put the crown of thorns away. Then he took a shower and went back to bed to rest. It had been quite tiring recently, so he wanted to relax for a day. The next morning, Mo Xiaobai received a call from Natsu Ki. She and Su Yin had returned. She even brought back the reward for Mo Xiaobai. Mo Xiaobai walked out of his room and saw Yin Shui walking out of her room. The two looked at each other and smiled. Are you going to Sister Xiaodong's place? Yin Shui asked softly. Mo Xiaobai nodded. Yes, she called you to? About the reward? Yes. Then let's go together. The two of them left the dormitory together. In Natsu Ki's laboratory building, Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui noticed that the door was closed, so they notified Natsu Ki. Soon, the door opened, and Su Yin poked her head out. She said listlessly, I'm sorry. You're here? Come in. Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui walked through the door. Sister Su Yin, why do I feel that you're so tired? Mo Xiaobai looked at the listless Su Yin. Su Yin couldn't help but roll her eyes and complain. I went to turn in the mission yesterday and was tired the whole day. I went out early in the morning and didn't sleep well. Of course I'm tired. Mo Xiaobai couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Su Yin's appearance, he was like a salted fish. Where's Sister Xiaodong? She's upstairs. The three of them went upstairs and came to the living room. Natsu Ki was sitting on the sofa waiting for them. When he saw the three of them, he smiled and nodded. You're here. Sit. Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui sat down, while Su Yin sat beside Natsu Ki. She leaned against the sofa and narrowed her eyes. Natsu Ki smiled and took out a set of black metal armor and a black longsword. He placed them on the table. Both the armor and the longsword were shining with a golden light. Legendary equipment. Xiaobai, give it a try. Mo Xiaobai was stunned. This is? Your reward is a Tier 3 legendary equipment set, the Dark Knight Guardian equipment set. It enhances the physical body quite a bit. When you attack, there's a chance to activate the power of darkness and launch a dark impact. When your force surges in and reaches a certain level, it can activate the Dark Knight Guardian shield. It can block a lot of attacks. You're about to open 3 chakras, right? Tier 2 equipment is no longer useful for you, so I've given you this set. Tier 3 legendary equipment? Mo Xiaobai's breathing stopped. He was pleasantly surprised. This was a full set of equipment. Yesterday, he was still thinking about changing his equipment when he reached Tier 3. Initially, he was thinking of a rare equipment. He did not expect to get a legendary equipment set this time. He nodded and picked up the equipment. He was about to go out to change. At this moment, Natsu Ki said, You don't have to go out to change. Mo Xiaobai was stunned. He looked at Natsu Ki with a strange expression. What did this mean? There were 3 girls here. Could it be that they wanted my body? Mo Xiaobai was shocked. This equipment can be imprinted with a soul imprint. After you imprint it, you can store in your mind. It'll be convenient for you to change it. Hearing this, Mo Xiaobai felt awkward. What's wrong? Natsuki was confused when she saw Mo Xiaobai's awkward expression. Nothing. Mo Xiaobai quickly shook his head. How do I imprint it? It was Mo Xiaobai's first time coming into contact with a piece of equipment that could be imprinted with a soul imprint. Drip your blood on it. Then use your spirit to touch the equipment. Mo Xiaobai nodded and followed Natsuki's instructions. Soon, he felt that his spirit seemed to have an inexplicable connection with the Dark Knight Guardian equipment set. Seeing Mo Xiaobai's expression, Natsuki smiled. Try to store it. Mo Xiaobai heard this and moved his mind. Suddenly, the equipment turned into a stream of light and entered Mo Xiaobai's mind. Mo Xiaobai's eyes widened. He was shocked. Was this the soul imprint? Then try to put on. Natsuki's voice pulled Mo Xiaobai back to reality. Mo Xiaobai nodded slightly and tried to put on the equipment. Suddenly, Mo Xiaobai's body was wrapped in a black light. The next moment, his body was covered in the black Dark Knight Guardian equipment set. The equipment was completely black, and there were complicated inscriptions carved on it. It made Mo Xiaobai's handsomeness look even more mysterious and evil. Even Natsuki and Yin Shui were stunned. Suyin leaned on the sofa and opened her eyes to look at Mo Xiaobai. She was stunned for a moment, then grinned. Yo, Xiaobai looks quite handsome in this equipment. It's just that he's too weak, ha ha ha. Mo Xiaobai rolled his eyes and ignored Su Yin's mockery. He could feel that after putting on this equipment, all aspects of his body, including explosiveness, endurance, strength, and agility, had doubled. Was this legendary equipment? Mo Xiaobai was shocked. After all, his body was far stronger than a two-apertured fundamentalist. There weren't many three-apertured fundamentalists who were stronger than him. It was just a set of armor, but it had doubled the strength of his physical body. Moreover, the equipment set's power hadn't been fully utilized yet. He would only be able to use its full power after he opened 3 apertures. One had to admit that legendary equipment was indeed powerful. Another black light flashed. Mo Xiaobai waved the black greatsword in his hand and smiled in satisfaction. This equipment was too powerful. With this equipment, his combat power had more than doubled. He could now easily kill a rank 3, rank 5, or rank 5 boss. With a thought, the equipment turned into a black light and melted into his forehead. Mo Xiaobai smiled at Natsuki. Thank you, Sister Shadow. Natsuki shook her head. What are you thanking me for? You're welcome. Mo Xiaobai nodded and didn't say anything else. Natsuki turned to Yin Shui. Xiao Shui, this is yours. It suits you very well. Natsuki took out a set of ice blue leather armor and a blue steel bow. Wisps of cold air were emitted from the leather armor. The Ice Walker set can also increase physical strength, focusing on agility. Moreover, it has a significant effect on the ice element. Each attack has a certain probability of triggering an additional frost arrow. At the same time, it can also activate Frost Path, increasing your speed. A smile appeared on Yin Shui's face as she looked at the outfit. Thank you, Sister Shadow. Originally, my family wanted to find me a piece of legendary equipment after I opened 3 chakras. Looks like I don't have to bother anymore. As she spoke, she skillfully engraved her soul imprint on the equipment. Mo Xiaobai. Was this the life of a tycoon? After opening 3 chakras, she could immediately change into legendary equipment. If it weren't for the fact that rank 3 epic equipment was too rare, she would probably have changed into epic equipment. How envious. At this moment, Mo Xiaobai thought of something. All right, Sister Shadow, can you make 5 more bottles of Breath of Life potion for me? His Breath of Life potion had stopped at level 2 perfection. Originally, he couldn't use the Breath of Life potion because he didn't have enough credits. Now that he had credits, he naturally had to use them. Moreover, if he bought a few more bottles, he could directly cultivate to level 3 perfection. Natsuki smiled. Of course. Then I'll send the herbs to you in the afternoon. Okay. On the side, Yin Shui saw how familiar the two were and was stunned. She asked, "Sister Xiaodong, you seem to be quite familiar with each other." Hearing this, Natsuki smiled and played with her long emerald green hair. Xiaobai often tests medicine for me. Yin Shui. She looked at Mo Xiaobai with a strange expression. Mo Xiaobai. Why did he see sympathy in Yin Shui's eyes? He couldn't help but roll his eyes. Then, Sister Xiaodong, I'll go back first. Yin Shui also stood up. Sister Xiaodong, I'll go back to cultivate too. Natsuki nodded and stood up. I'll send you out. After leaving Natsuki's laboratory building, Mo Xiaobai and Yin Shui said goodbye. Yin Shui went to the force building to cultivate. As for Mo Xiaobai, he went to the transaction building first. After buying the ingredients for the breath of life medicine, he still had to find Meng Sensei and tell him about the crown. Teaching area, Mengqing's office. Mo Xiaobai gently knocked on the door. Unhurried footsteps could be heard, and soon the office door opened. Mengqing's elegant face was reflected in Mo Xiaobai's eyes. He was still casually wearing a white shirt and gold-rimmed glasses, looking very gentle. However, in Mo Xiaobai's eyes, Mengqing, who had always been white, was now surrounded by a dazzling red light. As expected, Mo Xiaobai was overjoyed and confirmed it. That crown was probably only useful for Meng Sensei. Meng Sensei, am I bothering you? Mo Xiaobai greeted him with a smile. Mengqing pushed his gold-rimmed glasses and shook his head with a smile. Of course not, come in. Mo Xiaobai walked into the office. It was still the same familiar office filled with books. The two sat on the sofa, and Mengqing smiled. I heard you went to Northern Green Lake to do a mission again. How was it? Did you encounter any danger? Mo Xiaobai smiled embarrassedly. It was common for students to go out on missions. If that was the case, he would have to miss some of his elective classes. Mo Xiaobai naturally didn't attend history classes during this period of time. However, Akatsuki Academy was very relaxed. As long as he passed the exam, there would be no problems. He nodded. Yes, I did encounter some problems. He remembered the strange, evil god statue at the end. Oh, what happened? When Mengqing saw Mo Xiaobai's appearance, he became somewhat curious. It's like this, Mo Xiaobai told Mengqing about what happened. After Mengqing finished listening, his brows furrowed slightly. Murloc riot? It's related to the evil god? Three-headed shadow, Snake Yujiang. This evil god's strength is average and not very strong. Not very strong. Mo Xiaobai was stunned. Mengqing smiled. Normally, the more powerful the evil god, the more powerful his church will be. Although the Shadow Church is not weak, it's not very powerful either. Yujiang's strength is naturally not very powerful among the evil gods. Mo Xiaobai had a look of realization. Then he smiled and said, "Oh, right. By the way, Mr. Meng, I found something in the last Fishman's lair. I think you'll be interested in it." What is it? Let me see. Mengqing pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses. The smile on his face was still very elegant and easygoing. Mo Xiaobai smiled and took out the crown of thorns that had been cleaned. Mengqing was first stunned when he saw the crown of thorns. Then his eyes widened and he stood up abruptly. This is the crown of the Meng King,